Okay, this should be episode 2 of Counterpoints. And my guests this week, I'll just give you a brief introduction of them. Okay, so one of the people I have here used to be a really good Counter-Strike player in 2001. It's now 2014. He is a Counter-Strike player.
I don't know which one you were talking about there for a second.
No, so some of that remained true. I mean, I'm sure Jordan was pretty good in 2001 as well when he was like 8 or something. But no, you used to be a pretty good player back then, right now too?
Decent, you'd say.
Okay, and you're still hanging in there though?
Yeah, I'm still having my fun, yeah.
Until they claw it out of your dying hands, you're not going to give up on this shit, are you?
We'll see what happens, you know.
Okay, so we've got Natu here. And actually, for anyone who doesn't know, he's a really old school 1.6 player. Actually was playing at WCG back in 2001, played all through the years of right up until almost the end in 1.6. I think he only retired in something like 2010 or something, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. And then my other guest here, his name suits what he's done internationally in Counter-Strike. It's nothing. And so, no, actually, listen, sometimes if people came to America and then, like, you know, he'd had enough sleep and then he'd enjoyed himself enough, then you'd see a really great player, sort of like in that movie. You remember that really good movie, everyone? It came out in 2007, and we're all eagerly anticipating the sequel 8 years later. Like, it's a bit like Sin City, really.
I keep getting asked about that, and I'm like, I don't know if it's coming.
No CSGO version?
I feel like that would just be like someone in the community would have to make it. I don't think I'm going to initiate it.
Yeah. Plus, then you'd have to start cheating, playing online again. So, I
Wall
mean,
hack,
who wants to
aimbot.
go do that?
I don't really want to mess with the Valve devs, anti-cheat, yeah.
Okay, I get it. So, my other guest here is Nothing, and he's also a 1.6 player, but he was like a latter day player and came around in about, I think it was about 2008, you started to come up and become known.
I joined EG. Went to Code 5 Moscow.
Good decision, right? Good decision.
Hey. It was a good decision.
Well, for your wallet, it certainly was. Anyway, so moving on. So let's go to the show now. Let's go to the show now. So we're going to start off discussing ESL 1. Before we talk about specific results, coming into this tournament, the big questions everyone mainly had were actually about like the format and the maps and like who would that affect, who would actually be good on it. Now, one thing people in the public didn't really know was how many of the teams actually like practiced these maps. How many people actually, like for example, did some of the lesser teams specifically think like, let's just go crazy practicing overpass and hope we can get it? If I ask like both of you separately, like start with you, Nothing. Did your team actually practice those maps as much as you could?
Mm-mm.
Not at all?
Nope.
I'm sure you have a hard time finding practice for it.
Yeah, once we got to Europe, it was funny. NiP was one of our few scrims on it, and they left because they didn't want to play us. And then DAT was one of our other scrims, and then they left because they had some like league match online. So we played about 13 rounds total on it, on Kabul, and about 25 rounds on Overpass.
And did you have any sense for how it was supposed to be played? Like, had you talked
I
to
watched
anyone?
a couple of demos, and we talked a little bit about, like, you know, Overpass. You know, teams like to take this part quick with flashes. They like to control this part late. These are kind of some of the plant spots and how you defend them after plant. Kabul, obviously, as 1.6 players, we had more knowledge on, but that drop-down hole adds like a, you know, get-right lurk aspect to it that we had to be aware of. And so those are the only things we even paid attention to. That's what I think got us even close versus NiP. I mean, our CT side was
okay, so I mean,
awful.
we'll get to that stuff later as we go through the tournament. But actually, just as a general topic, let me put this to you.
Yeah.
You know, in the past, okay, back in Natu's day, in like old school CPL tournaments, they used to have certain maps that only were played in the American League, right? They used to have Mill and Fire, and we didn't have these like, maps in Europe at the time. And what would happen was, if a European team lost on it, fans who were a bit naive about how practice works would always just say, "Oh, why don't you just practice those maps?" And then the European teams would say, "Yeah, but no one will practice with us, even in Europe, you know, because we don't like these maps, we don't play them." Was there no possible way to get any practice, you don't think? Was there no other NA teams who'd give you a try, or no one was playing it?
Yeah, everyone kind of just laughed at us when we asked. We're like, okay, well, what map do you want to play first? They would say like Dust 2, because that's the map of the week for ESEA. We're like, all right, we'll play Dust 2, and then maybe an Overpass after a Kabul, and they're just like, nah, there's no point for us. That's it. That's normally how the conversation went.
Fair enough. Natu, in Europe, even though you weren't going to ESL 1, were you actually practicing these maps with your team?
No, like But I kept looking at the people, like the Facebook group the teams are looking practice for, I mean, not until like very late into like right before the tournament, people were actually catching up on practicing on the map, and even then, it didn't seem like people were super active with it. And I mean, you could tell, like watching from the games at ESL, that teams didn't have that much experience on the maps, because like as the tournament went further and the maps were played more, you could see the meta game of those maps change for every and each game for both maps, especially Cobble. Teams were playing it very differently at the beginning of the tournament compared to later stages of the tournament. Yeah, exactly. So people were pretty much practicing the map at the actual tournament.
Are there any things that come to mind, like initially people hadn't picked up on this little thing here that got abused, or this was like the general way that people started to play it when it was being worked in the tournament?
For example, Cobblestone, you could tell like teams were playing like further back in B, for example, like later on in the tournament compared to like the earlier stage of the tournament.
Yep.
Did you notice anything? Nothing?
Well, that was actually a conversation I was talking to Nip after they beat us, and I remember giving Forrest that critique. I was like, you guys should probably just hide in the back of B the whole time right now versus LDLC. And he gave me credit, and I'm sure he'll attest that. He's like, after the match, he's like, all we did is listen to what you said, and they just sat in the back of the site. That was one thing for sure. And then on T side, teams just kind of like dragging out the terrorists, or dragging out like their A hit, because it's really hard to like overstack A or B late, and then having that one flanker. But yeah, our first half on CT side, as Natsu was saying, we were trying to play close B on the rush versus NIP the first like 7 rounds, and then we just were like, all right, this doesn't work. So we just immediately best spawns rushed to the back of B, and it was so much more simple because they would smoke off the connector and we'd just be back there, and it's just like that whole area is pretty useless. I think that should be removed, or maybe another pathway to B on Cobble, like the Forge 1.6 map.
So before this tournament had started, Natu, without thinking of the actual results and going off that, just based on knowing what you knew about who was practicing, what would you have been able to guess, like, oh, I think this team's actually gone really hard for doing some practice on this overpass or cobblestone, or do you think some really good teams just never practiced them at all?
I don't think so. No, it wasn't really. I wasn't really able to tell if certain teams. You would guess that probably the teams with less chance of going through would probably opt on putting more effort into those maps, because that's going to be more random into it, and it'll make their chances better. But nothing that I could tell really before the tournament.
I saw Fnatic was pretty good on overpass. We scrimmed them before, and that was just a struggle. That was the only scrim we really had, and then I just saw them practicing it. LDLC seemed like they were pretty good on customs too. I mean, aside from overpass more so than that Cobble, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So coming into the tournament, the big thing that was kind of shaping how we thought of the teams was G3, the Gfinity LAN. And at the Gfinity LAN, Virtus Pro won the tournament. It looked really great in the playoffs, and then Titan was suddenly back, and they came top 2, and then Dignitas beat NiP and came top 4. So we had these teams. People were thinking, oh, maybe we can expect big things from these teams. What were you going into ESL 1? Did you think those teams were the strongest? What were you thinking? Who were you expecting was going to be the strongest?
Which one?
Well, I honestly thought, people, first of all, even Epsilon, Shoxy, and them, everyone's like, oh, Shoxy didn't play well. Well, a player like that doesn't just, sit on his hands and not play well. Like, if he really wants it, he's going to come back the next LAN and play well. Virtus Pro, they knew that a lot of teams hadn't come into G3 to prepare it, so I felt like they're only going to play better the next LAN. So if it was the same map pool, I think all of that logic would have been much easier to apply. But the struggle was that everyone kind of had this extra couple things to spread their attention a little thin in their preparation, and I think that the vetoes alone made it a little tougher on some of those teams, because I think what makes some of these teams so good is the ones like Virtus Pro and NiP and stuff is over time their teamwork on the main maps is just there's so many layers to it that it might look like they're just playing 3A and 2B on Inferno like NiP always does, but they obviously have a lot of layers to their communication and the way they move around the map. So I think it just made it tougher for people like Virtus Pro, who has excellent teamwork on the main maps to prepare it. Now you needed at least 6 good maps instead of 4 or 5.
Who did you think was strong now too?
Well, I mean, I agree with nothing with the fact that it was really hard to make predictions with the map pool being different and the veto system coming into play, especially in BO3s. obviously, of course, in the BO1s as well. For example, let's say the Titan Dignitas game, where, you know, Titan ended up playing on Dignitas on Nuke, which is, you know, you don't want to do that. But it was probably just something that was forced upon them because of the way the vetoes of the maps goes. But, you know, I did think Virtus Pro was going to be one of the favorites. Having played, we got destroyed by Titan in the ESL 1 qualifier, like the first decider match for which one goes through. And I felt like they were in a really good shape, like individually and as a team. So I expected them to go through the group. I had a hunch that NIP is going to be back up there. You know, they'd had some struggles, but I was pretty sure, you know, that they'd have 2 finals appearances on the majors, lost both. So I was pretty sure they had like extra 10-15% to put in themselves for this one. So I don't know. I mean, the usual suspects, I guess.
Okay, so if we think about in the group stage, we'll just go group by group. So in Group A, that was the one where it was Epsilon, NiP, Hellraisers, and then Team Wolf. And obviously Team Wolf, like, we don't really need to discuss that. Like, they came and they weren't very good and they lost. Okay, fair enough. But in this group, I think actually the team who didn't make it's the first one to talk about, which is like Hellraisers. What is your sense for what Hellraisers is, Natu? Because when you look at the lineup on paper, you keep thinking like this should surely be a really good team, and yet,
yeah,
you know, it seems like sometimes they just do nothing.
It's like an on and off team. I think it really depends on the day which Hellraisers is going to show up, and feels like that's been the way for them for the past. For the core of that lineup that they've had for quite a long time now. So I think it was just one of those days when things were not working out for them. I mean, they got destroyed, right, in their first game.
Yeah, I think it was like 16-1 or something.
Yeah, 16. Yeah, against Epsilon.
Yeah, Epsilon, that's right.
Exactly. So that's not the easiest way to start your tournament, getting destroyed 16-1. Then having to play NIP right after that. You know, so they're really, really hard to predict, really. Like one of those teams where you don't want to be betting on or, you know, want to making predictions on.
I noticed there's like a weird trend with their team. The only games they really tend to win against big teams is when like they are the underdog. And then when actually you think they're going to do well, that's when they do badly. Like that's how inconsistent they are, the team. I want to ask you a question like about this team. Because it'd be one thing if they'd had one tournament that they didn't do that well at, okay? Or like... they had a good run for a few months and then they had a dip, but it seems like there's no consistency with that team. Like when you look at that lineup, to have that many good aimers, like if it's just my opinion, I think they should just break that team up. Like to me, it's like a waste of time to have so much talent in one team when you could probably make 2 better teams if you took in role players and you made 2 separate teams with a really good identity. Like I can't see how that Hellraisers team can ever become like a world-class team, you know?
I mean, well, the difference between doing well and doing bad is so thin. It's just a matter of few percentage, really. Like, you know, there's so many small factors that go into actually winning or losing a Counter-Strike match. It could be just like one bad call. It could be, you know, things building up from that. I don't think they should probably break up the team. I mean,
you think they should keep those 5 players?
I mean, you know, there's the talent. They got the players. They've got the utilities to do well. It's just a matter of things, you know, going the right way, and then realizing what works and what doesn't. I would try once more at least.
Listen, the thing is, I've no doubt they're gonna, because the way it seems like they don't ever think about roster changes. So it seems like they're gonna keep that team. But that's what's confusing to me, because if you lose 16-1 to Epsilon, and they lost on Inferno, which in theory is like a really good map for Hellraisers, like it's one thing if you'd lost to NiP and maybe NiP was in like incredible form and they just dominated you, but Epsilon isn't even some team themselves who have loads of aimers. They actually are kind of a bit short on like star players, you know. They're more of like the style of play is more what gets you with Epsilon. So if you're getting crushed by them, that tells me that
1v3'd on pistol, right?
Something ridiculous, yeah.
First pistol, that was the Shoxy domination. FXCO is pretty good. GMX has some pretty random nutty aim that you can just throw them in there. I don't know. Epsilon has that ability to do that. Hellraisers also, we kind of practiced against them online, and they seemed a little iffy. We had a pretty bad setup, and we beat them on a couple mats, and it was kind of surprising. So they might just like Natsu was saying, they might need to just reassess how they use the players because they have skill, but maybe they're relying on the wrong leads or something, lead men.
So from G3, the Epsilon team, initially they started off quite well. They beat NiP and they were doing good in the group, and we thought, oh, they're going to go to the playoffs, and They probably should have, actually, if the normal head-to-head record tiebreaker had been what decided, but instead they went out in the group stage at the very end. The big thing about Epsilon is obviously everyone just looks and sees like Shox, and they go, oh, how is Shox playing? Like, if he's playing amazing, maybe he can carry them. What's your evaluation of Shox been while he's been in Epsilon Nothing? What do you think of him? Is he the same Shox that was like that monster in Titan?
I mean, yeah, I think he's the same monster. I think the difference is, you know, the more you have a structure like Titan, where so much is built around each player, you don't have the same opportunities that are just like, okay, they're rushing B right now. Shox is probably going to come in second and kill the rotator on Inferno, and then the backhaul guy, and this guy. It's just like Shox is just going to kill whatever's in front of him, and that might change round to round with Epsilon. Whereas with Titan, it was a little bit more probably premeditated. So I don't think he's changed at all as a player. He's a fucking beast, in my opinion. I think it just changes when you don't have, you know, when he's now more of a veteran mindset on the team, whereas in Titan, there was all these players that had already been at the top level, and they can all kind of bounce ideas off each other. Now it's kind of like they're relying on Shox. So supposedly you're strat calling, right? So he's trying to put other people into good positions and also try to take some rounds into his own hands. So it's like, that's a weird line to balance right there.
I mean, to pick that up, well, hand it over to you, Natu. When you saw Shox in Titan, it looked like part of what made Titan become really good was when they figured out like the perfect way to use Shox. Like when they were winning, he was at his best, okay, and he looked awesome. Whereas
I think if you went back to Titan, that'd be pretty insane. But
yeah, like, I agree. But I mean, when you look at Epsilon now, I always remember the first tournament he played. No, it might not have been the first one. I think DreamHack Summer was the first one he played with them. And when I watched him in that tournament, he actually looked quite bad, but then he was doing weird stuff, like he was always the primary AWPer on CT side on Inferno, and like he wasn't playing any of the spots or any of the way that he used to in Titan. So I thought it was going to go really badly because they looked like they were totally misusing him. What do you think of Shox in Epsilon now? Is there are there any obvious differences now to you?
Not that many that I can think of really obvious differences. I think just it takes a while to really get your grasp on a team when you're going into a new team, playing with different people. Maybe he's played with them before, I don't know, but still, you know, when you're a new player in a new team, it takes a while to really find your spot. And as you said, you just gotta be able to utilize players that they're, you know, with that they can perform to their best of their abilities, and that's kind of what's been happening. And the weird thing is that he can actually do calling, he can op, he can, you know, kill everyone on the server. Yeah, it's insane how versatile he is and how much he can do. I do think he is probably the most complete player in Counter-Strike Go right now.
Fair enough.
Simply.
So the other team in this group, obviously we're going to talk about them later in this tournament because it's NiP. NiP came into this tournament, I think people were probably quite unsure of their form, right? I mean, they got crushed by Dignitas at G3 and they hadn't looked that good in the group stage, and then they had that ESEA LAN where they didn't even come top 4. I mean, did you actually buy into the story, which is like, oh, when it's a major tournament, you know, NiP will somehow, they'll return from the dead, or maybe it was just this vacation, and that was what they kept saying, you know, oh, we were just on the vacation, and we weren't that serious. I mean, did you buy into that? Did you think they'd be the same NiP that we saw at the past tournaments now too?
Having played against these guys multiple times throughout the years, a couple of years, I know how frigging good they can be at their best. Like I said, I'm going to repeat myself, but it's such a small margin that's going to make the difference between winning
just
and
like
losing
our
and
game
fighting. Well, yeah, going into I don't think you want to even go into that.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's such a small margin.
The champions prevailed, yeah.
Exactly. And it's just like, you know, good players, good teams are going to find that extra little and play just that much better, that they're going to be up there. And somehow, I don't know why, but it seems like they could just find their form again.
Yeah. Could I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because people were asking me this question too about NiP before this tournament, like what do you expect out of them? And I think one of the key things, obviously, to look at when you're thinking about NiP is obviously they're looked at as one of the best teams. They play all the events, and all their opponents really focus on them when they play them. So for NiP, I think one of the key things is just being in a good mindset and on their personal lives in game, because they know they could bring it. They have so much, and if they can get to like just the root of their playing, they're going to play well no matter what. So I think like during ESEA LAN and stuff, I think just from talking to the players and hanging out with them, it didn't seem like they were just that fresh. You know, that sometimes you feel that team and you can just feel the energy coming out of them when they play, and I think they needed that back. And I was like, well, better way to get that back than a $250,000 major that they haven't clinched yet. So I was not expecting anything less from NIP. I mean, obviously it's hard to just pull shit out of your ass all the time, but that's one of the teams who could do it. You know, like they beat us 16-14 in 2 maps, but like some could say that the score could have been worse. I don't know how we beat them on Nuke like we did, but I knew that they were going to come to this tournament and be ready to scrape out rounds, even if they were down 14-1.5.
Yeah, I mean, if they had they bombed out of this tournament, then I would have said that they were in trouble.
Yeah.
But you know, I was not going to make any judgments before ESL 1.
Definitely.
Okay, in fact, let's not do it too structured. Let's keep going on that topic and let's talk about NIP. Because when in the group stage, okay, they lost to Epsilon, and they lost on Cobblestone, in fact. They beat Hellraisers, but even that was like on Overpass, and that was like a reasonably close game. It's not like at this point in the tournament you can think NIP's like in great form or anything. It still looks like maybe there's something wrong, maybe they're in trouble a little. They're not the same strong team. When you actually drew them in the playoffs, nothing. This has to be like, I even said, this is like the best.
4 out of 5 times.
I said this is like the best ever chance for someone like C9 to beat NIP in a best of 3, right? This is when, in theory, they're the weakest we've ever seen them.
Outside of ESA land.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, like a big major type tournament.
Yeah,
it's very rare you're going to get a chance like this.
Well, that's what we felt too, and we felt like just from talking to them, we could tell that they weren't. Like, they're confident, obviously. Those guys have won so many majors, but we could feel a little difference, something that wasn't the normal NIP, and we were really beating ourselves up for not clinching that Dust 2 game, so you can continue. But yeah, we felt it. We knew it was a chance.
That was the weird thing as well, because when you saw the maps that came out, it's like, okay, NIP's going to win Nuke, like, you know, don't worry about that. And then I guess C9 will win Dust 2, and then we'll go to the 3rd map. So when you won Nuke, and then when you were ahead on Dust 2, this was like, you could have closed them 2-0. Legitimately, that's like not even a ridiculous statement.
Yeah, no, not at all. We actually felt the 2-0 close pretty comfortably. We fucked up on pistol rounds and Dust 2. We lost both pistols, lost the 1v3 to Force. Those are the type of things that, like Natsu's saying, a small percentage of things that happen, very small decisions, someone peeking a little too early, and it just has like a domino effect on the game. So I mean, just from playing, I honestly feel like we were outplaying them in most of the games, most of the rounds. It was just key moments that they clinched.
Even Cobble, you were like, you know, I felt like watching it, I felt you were winning it.
The first half of the game looked like, C9's going to be just enough ahead all the time, and they're probably going to get to the 16 rounds somehow. What did you think in that game? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to have a lot of thoughts on Cobble, but yeah, I felt the same thing. I felt like they didn't really know what to expect. We kind of just learned from them on their T side about, you know, the timings of B rushes and how we can get away with it. So as the half progressed, we just tried to stick with it. And those eco rounds really, what did we lose, 3 on our T side?
Something like that, yeah.
So again, it's just like those small percentage things where we felt like all the gun rounds we were outplaying them. And in terms of like situationals, we were staying patient. A couple rounds at B, we could have lost like a 3 versus 4. We stayed calm. Fiffler peeked us connector. We got a pick. Freeberg peeked us backside. We picked him. And then like we won some of those close rounds, and that was really good poise by us for not having like our practice was worse, by far worse than NIP's, and especially for them being a championship team. I think the main thing we had going for us was, you know, the fact that we aren't looked at as much, the fact that we have skill. We don't have a lot of textbook-looking strats. We just kind of use trading and teamwork. So I felt like that was playing to our favor in this matchup. I felt like these guys just had trouble reading us, and they were just like, let's try to play our game. And I felt like that worked for us because I wanted them to just sit in their spots and try to outshoot us because I felt like we had the inspiration to do it. But I think we shot ourselves in the feet with some of those eco rounds.
When you almost won, okay, on 2 maps, and then it goes to the 3rd map, and then it's Cobblestone, and you've said here like you hadn't practiced it much, you didn't really know that much about it.
Yeah.
Even if you want to keep your teammates like keep morale up and believe you.
No, we just got out of our heads. We tried to.
Was there a degree to which like your heart sank a bit when you were like, we have to play the decider on Cobblestone?
A little bit, but I've like had this happen to me so many times that I try to immediately cut those thoughts out until after the matchup. If anything, I was more focused on, you know, joking with Shroud backstage. I didn't want him getting into those type of thoughts, you know. So I was just kind of fucking around with him, you know, cracking jokes before the game. Like, you know, we're playing Cobble, 3rd map decider, boys. Like, this is kind of a joke to us. So let's just go in and, you know, round by round it, you know. So I was just trying to keep the mood light, and yeah.
There's no other way to go into it, though. You just gotta laugh it off.
Yeah, it's like, Jesus, we're about to go out on cobble possibly. This is impressive. Especially after beating him on Nuke. We did not expect to win on Nuke like that, you know?
Well, Natu, what did you think of this series?
It was the most probably the most entertaining series that I watched. As a spectator, that was great advertisement for Counter-Strike as a game for the normal fans. Yeah, I mean, not even that, just how the maps went and how close they were and all those situations. Actually, all Cloud9 games were pretty fun to watch. With for example, the Dignitas game, those ridiculous rounds we saw. Yeah. For example, also great marketing for the game. But I mean, I felt like the NIP series you guys had. I felt like you had it was in your hands all the time, but somehow you just let it slip. So many small screw-ups.
Loves that too. He's like, somehow. What do you mean somehow? They're Americans, of course. They'll always find a lose.
Yeah, but I mean, as someone that has been in those situations, playing in competitive matches, I like watching those situations. Just made me cry. Almost, That's how
I can
bad
imagine
I felt.
It was like spectating, because I know as a spectator I get always more nervous than I ever do playing, or anxious.
Exactly. Yeah, anxious, indeed. Yeah, I got really anxious watching that, but it was just purely entertaining.
Because the crazy thing about this series is, that what I thought before the game that I said there, where I thought this is the best ever chance for C9 to win. Okay. It played out like that in the series. Actually, okay, I usually in my analysis I never use the word should, because I think people overuse that. Okay, and if you let people start doing that, then every time they lose an anti-kill, they're like, oh well, I should have won that. Whereas actually sometimes, okay, say you have the guns and they have pistols, if they've spotted what you're going to do and they actually execute something properly, they did the right thing there. Okay, you can't just say, oh, I should always win that. Okay, but this is one of the rare times when actually, if I was going to go by what would happen if you played that same scenario 10 times each time, I think C9 would probably win 2-0 in maps, or even if it went to the third map, it probably should have gone to overtime even when NiP started coming back. They probably shouldn't have won that last round in the game. There was so many things that happened. And then also, the big thing for me was, okay, I'll give you a point that I brought up during the final of the last EMS, the one that was in Poland, which was in the final when NiP was getting owned by Virtus.pro. And it looked like, okay, there's nothing they could have done in this game. Virtus.pro was always going to win it. They were just a way better team. One of the reasons why I was really critical of them letting Mirage go through is because it meant that Virtus.pro had 2 really strong maps as the first 2 maps of the series. So Virtus.pro could just close them out in 2. And I'd always said, if NiP had a different map there, and it had gone okay, you get really beasted on one map. So let's say you lose Inferno really hard. But let's say on this other map, either you win it, or it was way closer. You could have had more time to get your shit together in the match, And that's kind of what it felt like in this map. In this match, NiP was so far behind on those first 2 maps, they barely got out of the second one, and it's they had just enough time on Cobblestone to find Get Right just came out of nowhere and actually woke up and started killing everyone, and it's they waited just long enough to be able to pull it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, we honestly it, and I don't know if we ever even felt like that was happening to us. We didn't know who was really killing us. Get Right had a couple triple kills. We dropped on his head. We didn't feel like he did anything special. And from our shoes, we were just Shroud and Hiko were fucking putting the pain on Get Right every time he peeked them. So I never felt like he had any advantage over us. I just felt like it was us falling into the NiP trap, and the NiP trap normally involves Get Right waiting around a corner to kill you. So it's it's never Get Right or Forest intimidates us. It's just it's the NiP aura of them sticking in it to the last round. And, I don't think we were particularly nervous. I just think we were unsure of what we could do on Nuke. Dust, too, I don't know if we got overexcited. I didn't feel like I was too much, but a couple rounds supposedly, I missed a couple kills, but a couple rounds supposedly we planted top A, and so someone peeked big pit guy, Get Right was in big pit, and we planted in a 3v3, and he had an auto sniper, and for no reason I think Semphis peeked top A, and then I told Hiko to come out long door, and Hiko should have came out. We were just doing these things that were kind of sabotaging each other. And it was these rounds where we normally really shine in. If you saw in our Titan game, we were winning a lot of 3-on-4s and 2-on-3s and 3-on-5s. And it didn't seem any harder versus NiP, to be honest, because we were killing their key players. We were killing Zist and Forrest, or killing their offer early when we took top A. And we had these situations set up for us. And I think we were just getting too antsy, and not out of nervousness, because we wanted to exude confidence. We didn't want to say, let's just hide in a corner and try to play too smart. We wanted to bring that confidence.
Trying to close the game, right? You were just maybe pushing a bit too hard.
Yeah. And no one really, I never looked to my left or my right and saw any real fear. Even Shroud was tossing smiles versus Nip. And, Shroud's the type of kid who you could tell he doesn't get too phased. And that's kind of why we recruited him. He cares probably more about our own thoughts about him. And that's why I was kind of sitting next to him, joking with him the whole tournament, because I was like, this kid's nuts. If he could just get on our team aura, we could really go far. So it was unfortunate that we slipped up in some of those after plant situations on Dust 2.
I mean, in general, that's like, of the two problems you could have, being too hesitant to close a game and letting someone come back in because you just play too passive, or being a bit too aggressive. I actually prefer the latter, I'd rather you try to be decisive, because that way, if you get it right, you actually might have just closed the game really early.
And that's kind of like the Swedish mindset, too. They never like to play too hesitant,
Yeah.
And I think
because you don't want the other guy to decide the fate of the round, right? That's the worst feeling when he does it, and he does exactly the one thing he could have done and wins it, whereas...
Yeah.
But I mean, the same logic applies to Counter-Strike that applies to every sport out there. The team that does less mistakes is going to win.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's plain and simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, even though you said Get Right and Forest didn't intimidate you, and it didn't really, you weren't seeing them on the map like they're doing all this great stuff, I have a question, though, about the Cobblestone game, because one of the things I noticed about that game was it felt like that map, I didn't realize this until that game, that map is almost like designed to make Get Right look really good on CT side, because it's like a million corners that you can hide around, and there could be someone there and you could be pushed up, or you could just be a million miles away. And so it had the effect that even if Get Right isn't there and he doesn't kill you, if you're the terrorists, it feels like, from what I saw in that game, as I saw your team like slow down and you kept having all these rounds where you go in the site right at the very end of the timer, I wondered if that was a factor, like you had to go slower as you were clearing areas, you didn't want to just rush in and then Get Right, kill 3 people in the back. Was that really a factor at all? Am I overthinking that?
I think you're overthinking it a little bit, only because I think we just didn't know what corners to expect at different points in the round. Like when you play, like when we went late B, for instance, it's such a big bomb site that we're not sure if Freeburg's just camping back there by that blue toilet area, and at the same token, we don't have smokes perfect. So like if we didn't throw that smoke perfectly for the connector, they're just going to pick us crossing. So you might have seen a lot of hesitance from us because we wanted to make sure we weren't just getting picked off by ourselves. But yeah, I think that was mostly what it was. I think it was just us. Like the eco round I lost, the time ran out at the A bomb site. I think it just took us so long to get there because regardless of who was playing that site, we were just I was jumping around, jiggle peeking everything because I was like, I do not know where these guys are going to play on the eco round. And then when it came down to it, Freeburg was hiding in a corner that I didn't even remember to check. Like I watched it. And I literally just run past him, like looking everywhere but there. I just like that's like such a common spot now that I think about it. I don't think that'll happen to me anymore. But yeah, we just didn't know where to look sometimes.
Natu, as the deciding map, I already said I thought like C9 really could have won in 2 maps here. People don't like this, okay, because you're supposed to buy into the bullshit story and be like, no, Nip would they had the champion spirit and that's why they were always going to win, and it was written in destiny. I think if any other map had been that 3rd map, Nip would have just lost, actually probably convincingly, I think they would have just lost the series as the decider. What are your thoughts? I think Cobblestone really helped them there,
To an extent, I guess. I felt C9 was probably more on their A game for most of it. That's why I felt that they were going to win the series as the series went on, just by looking at how they were playing, how they were hitting their shots, and just by those small little things you can notice that tells you a little bit about how it's going to go. But that's with Cobblestone and the new maps. The teams haven't played much. Those small things, like Nothing just said, one corner, and you lose an eco round. One guy in a corner, you might not even know about, that it exists there because you haven't played the map that much. And
which is a shitty excuse to have, of course, but
it is. But I mean,
just the truth of the situation.
That's the fact, and that's not going to be the case in the future when we have maps, when we have more time to prepare. I mean, a month before this tournament. Those maps were announced, so that's one thing, and I don't think that was reasonable. But I think I'm getting lost with the question already here.
Okay, so
I'm just gonna stop.
I have a question for you then, Nothing, which goes like this: every single major is the exact same fucking storyline for your team, which is that.
Not really.
It is. Here's the. Oh, you haven't
Oh, we
listened to
played
the fucking storyline yet, motherfucker.
That's a good
You haven't heard the
storyline.
storyline yet.
But you're the one making it. I hate when you do this. You make up these fucking realities that don't exist. All right, keep going.
You ready? Okay, so the storyline goes like this. Every single time iBuyPower beats you at ESEA LAN, or iBuyPower is doing better domestically, and therefore the same story happens every time. Everyone says, oh, I guess I guess C9 aren't that good, and they're not going to be so good at the tournament. And then every single time, you do way better at the major, and each time you've played like NIP. In fact, you've had these 3 series against NIP that have all been either close, or you've been winning maps, or overall you've got a pretty good record against NIP, who in theory the best team ever. Why do you think at these majors specifically your team seems better?
Well,
you obviously don't, apparently, because that's just a story. So tell me the fucking real version, motherfucker.
Okay, here we go. I think iBuyPower overanalyzes their own game. I think they got to simplify their strengths a little bit. Daze is a smart player, but maybe they have too much pride in like outsmarting their opponents. Like that cash game versus Virtus Pro. Like I don't even know what they were doing. They were like just standing around in both extremities of the map and just not doing anything, and then they would hit a bomb site and it was super obvious, and Virtus Pro just had everyone there. So I think they sometimes just need to rely on a little bit more of the raw talent, which is more prevalent in CSGO, and which is I think why America has closed the gap a little more in between Europe in terms of skill, because nowadays I think Americans there's always been talented gamers, people who have good dexterity with their hands, and I think iBuyPower forgets that sometimes. Skadoodle can go off until you just put him in this caged strategic box where he has to follow something. Same with Swag. Steel, send that guy in to die. Just make sure he tries to get 1 kill. Like, it doesn't matter. But when Steel's and them are all trying to play smart and you're putting Swag in first and dying and then relying on Steel and Dazed to trade for these kids, it should be the opposite way around. You want Dazed, or you want Swag and AZK and Skadoodle going in with 100 HP and send Dazed in and Steel to die. And they're just doing all this weird strats that don't seem to complement their strengths.
Okay, so that's a great answer to why did iBuyPower go out in the group stage. But I was asking, why does C9 do so well against NIP and always do well in the majors?
So I think it's the opposite. We probably had like 2 strats on each map this LAN, and it was really just like read the opponent, have a default, know how to hit A, know how to hit B. And we just talked about, if they throw a smoke here, how can we approach that smoke grenade? What does that mean? We had some flaws. Like on Mirage, we ran into a brick wall because of that problem. Like Dignitas won 9 rounds on their CT against us because we didn't have much variety. And I think that's something we're going to talk about and work on. We actually have like a little cool down session planned this week to talk about that, because Dignitas was able to kind of descend Fetish mid, get an early pick, and then kind of rotate to where we were hitting late round. So we need to be able to kind of adjust our defaults a little bit smarter, but I think that's why we've been more successful. Because if you look at the last 3 majors that we played in 250Ks, the only one we really had preparation for was DreamHack Winter, the one where we lost to Fnatic, and that probably bit us in the ass the most because we played so cookie cutter versus Fnatic in that match. They would just scream the fuck out of us on Inferno. You remember they like 16-3'd us? They were just all over us. They were just pushing halls, pushing banana, pushing mid, opt down mid to alternate mid. And then in Poland, we didn't even practice the whole week before the LAN. We didn't even practice. And then we played NIP again, and I think that bit us in the ass. But I think what got us by those other teams, like we played the French team, Kiyoshima and them on Inferno, and Kenny S was with them or whatever. And those offers never do well versus us because we don't have such cookie cutter strats. I think it's hard for them to positionally play smart against us because we throw one smoke and all of a sudden we're up in their face. And versus a lot of these teams that have smarter strats with much more artistic grenades, you can kind of dance around what you see coming and get a quick op pick, get another quick op pick. Versus us, we're kind of just like, we're coming at you, and I think sometimes it catches these snipers off guard.
So how is your team able to be so confident when you play against, like, for example, whenever you play against the French, if you played against Titan, last time we saw that DreamHack, and you play against NIP, it seems like your team really gets up for those games and you believe you could win them. What's the problem playing iBuyPower then? Surely if you can beat NIP, or you can come close to beating them every time, why doesn't C9 go home and just dominate ESEA LAN, you know?
I would like to play them maybe at an international LAN. Maybe it would awaken us differently. I don't know. We just don't seem as inspired when we played them. Honestly, it almost felt like we gave up at ESEA LAN. Like we were just okay with losing, and it really pissed me off. And it's another thing we need to talk about. It's like a lack of care about playing them, because maybe it's because we don't feel like we have anything to prove when we play them. Like, because the whole world obviously says, when are the North Americans going to win an international LAN? Well, we don't really gain anything from beating our fellow North Americans. So maybe we have like a lack of motivation internally when we play them. Because on a separate note, whether you think it's stubborn or not, Duncan, we feel like we could outskill any players in the world, and I'm sure the other teams feel that way. You just have that confidence, and so it always comes down to, like Natsu was saying earlier, there's a small percentage of teamwork decisions, who makes the least mistakes. We got to work on that, but on a skill level, we're never going to be like, oh fuck, we're playing Nip, Get Right's on the other team. I would love Get Right to peek me every single round, the whole half, so I could try to kill him in reality, but that's not how matches are played. So when we play iBuyPower, I think it comes down to just like a mind game that kind of we just mind fuck ourselves.
Okay, so Natu, there's two sides. Jordan brought in the other side that I was going to bring in later. So there's two questions here, really. Why do you think C9 does so well at the major ones, and then why does iBuyPower do so badly at them?
I think he answered it pretty. I think he explained it pretty well. The thing with C9 and the way their team has played, always it has been harder to predict because it hasn't got such structure, playing like by flow and just like kind of sort of not pogging it, but playing it more freely and really depending on the strengths of their players. Whereas iBuyPower seems far more structured. Really want to like take a part of the I would say Central European style of Counter-Strike with them, which is very, very strategy based. And I guess they're easier to read. People will have better ideas on how to play against them, and that's translating into C9 doing well at the international tournaments and iBuyPower not doing so well at the international tournaments.
I think I've got a simpler explanation for the iBuyPower scenario, because here's the thing.
Go ahead.
They've changed players between these tournaments. Like only the core remains the same. So to me, they're a bunch of chokers. When they're at the lands that aren't as big, when they're at the ESEA LAN, they've just choked when they've come to the majors. At ESEA, they're comfortable. This is their home soil. They actually they know they can beat Call if they play them.
Skadoodle played pretty well at the G4s, G3. Swag always seems to play pretty well.
Here's the thing, though. They played well, nothing, but then they still lost in the clutch against Titan.
I think you guys, C9, are probably more laid back than iBuyPower as people and as players. Probably. That's my the way I see it. But like I think it was in Katowice where I was listening in on, like I was watching one of these POV streams on iBuyPower once or twice maybe, and they really
very critical on each other.
Exactly, like the way the tone of voice people were talking like to each other was like, okay, I wouldn't want to fucking be on that team. Like I don't want to listen to that crap all the time and try to actually play in a huge tournament.
That's one of the things I've noticed with them too, is they have some great players, and their leaders are pretty smart dudes in terms of what they know about the game, but they seem very critical about when they fuck up, and I think that's tough. Because obviously, I mean, everyone on that team is good, so I think that's what it just is annoying to listen to sometimes, because it's like you'll hear Steel or Daze have an argument, and they'll harp on AZK or Skadoodle for peeking, but it's like, obviously they know they shouldn't have peeked. They just fucked up the round. I doubt they need you to remind them in such a harsh manner the following round. Just focus on winning the next one. And I think, as Natsu's saying, that's probably annoying to deal with, but I haven't actually played with those guys on a team.
Another aspect to look at is that people are always talking about the how we have different roles as players. We have in-game leaders, we have oppers, we have more aggressive and more passive players. But the same applies in a social level as well. You have people who are the glue in the team, who smoothen up the situation where, just like nothing was talking about, keeping Shroud happy at the tournament. The same things apply socially as they do in-game roles as well. You need to have people that make sure that the mood is up there, that things are going well socially, not depending on how the game is actually going, So you gotta be, like, let's say you have a player who gets irritated really easily. You have to have a person that can smoothen the situation down, tone it down and things like that. For example, that's been my role for most of my teams too, throughout the year. So always, try to keep the team spirit high and make things work, because that's just as important as being good in the game, is to be where the harmony needs to be good socially just as well.
That's I mean, we don't need to get into down this road either, but I think that's the Nip argument with keeping Fiffler in too. Is a lot of people says they have all these behind the scenes things of, oh, Nip doesn't really want to play with him, and I just think, when you hang out with them at a LAN tournament, you see those guys' friendship, And, you know, maybe it's all baloney or whatever to a lot of people and analysts. But I think it does play a big role in not changing things. It really adds to the fight when you feel like you're fighting for your... There's like a little brotherhood feeling, you know? Obviously, they could pick someone else up, and that brotherhood wouldn't matter if the guy was just dominating and they had, you know, fucking Olaf Meister as their 5th or something, and they just were all of a sudden amazing. But then that sometimes adds a weird pressure because now they have this new guy who they have to give a role, and it... So, you know, maybe Nif will make a change eventually or something, but I think, like, that's why I always talk shit to Tommy. I'm like, why do you have to be so blunt? Like, I understand the statistics. I understand the outside perspective. I understand some of the things that have been said. Obviously, his teammates aren't happy if he goes 6-34 in 2 maps or something, but there is a lot to be said about just sticking with someone and having that team spirit. So, yeah.
Well, the thing is, in that sort of a scenario... I'll tie all these points together, actually. The Fiflaren thing with the iBuyPower thing with the C9 thing. I'd go like this. If the way Natu broke down the mentality there, I think is actually a good way to describe it. Because when I say they choke, I remember watching the listen-in stream. I can't remember what it's called on ESEA, where you can actually watch the
POV stream.
You can actually listen to them talk while they're in the game. So I was watching them at a tournament they won. They won the fucking LAN and they won all their series. And yet even in the matches they were winning, they were talking like you were talking here. It's not like they only did it in the ones they were losing, you know. They would be winning games, but if they lost a round in a game they were dominating, then Dazed or someone would be like, come on, man, your aim's better than that. You were supposed to, like really weird sort of criticism where it wasn't even like constructive criticism, like, oh, next time please throw the flash a second later. It was more like chastising them, you know.
Sometimes.
Yeah, the problem with that sort of approach is, I think with that sort of a team, you have to like win real. You have to be a front runner, basically. You have to really dominate for it to not be a problem. Everyone has to be hitting their shots and just dominate. Because when you get into those close games, when you're losing the tight situations, which usually are like you make a small mistake and that costs you that round, that's where you can't afford that guy to sort of like grind you down a bit even more after you lost the round. Like, oh, come on, if you'd have just gone back, you would have won that. Like, why didn't you defuse earlier? Like, you can't do that in a live match. That's a really bad approach. Like, that's a famous thing actually that those Swedish teams throughout all of CS history have never done. They've always had really good team morale in that sense. You never hear them talk shit to each other in a live match or
totally
when a teammate's doing badly. Like, I'll guarantee you in that EMS final where Fiflaren was like 9-44, I guarantee you Get Right wasn't like, come on man, I've got 15 kills, where are your kills? You know, there's no way he was doing that in the live. That would be even worse, right?
That's
exactly. A key moment I even remember in that same LAN, this one, Shroud was like 0-11 on against Dignitas or something on T side, but he had just dominated like Titan the match before. So I like right when he went 0-11, I just turned to him. I was like, first frag's the hardest, bud, and, and I just started kind of cracking on him. And then he's like, I think he got like 15 kills CT side or something, you know. So it's just like sometimes you need to let everyone know just to snap out of their own, because obviously you don't like playing bad. The guy, it's not like he's sitting there like, oh, this is whatever, I'm just chill. He's obviously in his own head pissed at himself a little for not getting a couple kills, but shit happens.
Those are the things you laugh about like after the game, not during the game. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Because to me, like the key difference here is like it's actually a difference in mentality of the leader, not even the team as much. Which is that when I think of your team, C9, I actually think your team is, I think it's actually a worse team than iBuyPower. Like if you just look at the raw pieces, like say I was putting together a team, like I'm a GM and I'm going to pick these pieces, I'm going to draft these ones. I would say the iBuyPower lineup's better and should perform better, and I even like the approach they have. But I think your team, this is just as an outsider, if I had to guess, it feels like your team just accepts the people who are in your team. Like when I used to play, okay, sometimes I would always say I'd rather have a teammate who isn't as skilled, but I know exactly what I'm going to get from him every time. And if he isn't skilled in this area, I accept it, okay, right? I know he's not going to do that, therefore I'm never going to give him like a job he can't do, okay? I'm not going to be like a bad leader and give him a task he can't succeed at. Whereas it feels like with the iBuyPower, because they've got such phenomenal players, I think, I don't know if this is coming from Dazed or the team in general, they expect too much from everyone. Like they expect everyone to hit every shot and just to dominate and run over every team. And listen,
maybe
in practice we won that map and we were stomping them and now you're losing. Like it feels like their expectations are really different.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels like C9 just find something that works. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing, just find something right now that we can make work. What do you think, Nothing? Is this too much?
I think the general gist of your point I agree with, just finding something that works. Yeah, definitely. I like in accepting the team and accepting the roles. I mean, I think that's why we wanted to keep Sean, even though a lot of people said, oh, there's a lot more better skilled players than Sean Garrett. Well, we like Sean. We know what to expect out of him. He gives good feedback. He's a great teammate, communicates well, not going to get shaken by situations, you know. So, yeah. I don't know everything about iBuyPower, but I think some of our guesses might be pretty close. I think they lack some team spirit, maybe.
Like, the funny thing is, when you guys lost Anga, and a lot of people online were like, why did they do that? Anga's a really good player. They should have just kept him. Like, why, they did well at that LAN. I actually could get it when I heard the reasons, okay, because I thought to myself, actually, for a team like C9 especially, that's the sort of team that does have to be like that. It has to have a good mentality, and you can't have, like, negative presences, and everyone has to accept everyone in the team. Because actually, here's a key thing. I actually wouldn't tell your team to change a player, like upgrade this position here, because so far, jokes aside, there is no NA team that's doing well at international tournaments. So if you've got a lineup that can actually perform there, then you probably shouldn't fuck with that lineup if you can not, I mean, you can't do anything if someone leaves to iBuyPower, but in theory, you want to keep that core together because you've got some sort of chemistry, right?
Yeah, and the loyalty is key too. I mean, it was unfortunate that Swag left, but at the same time, I didn't want to try to convince him otherwise, and that was, I think, a key thing. Is like, I understood some of his decisions that I don't even need to release publicly or whatever, but it was just, it's a team vibe thing, and you want the team vibe to stay good. And like you said, that's kind of why we parted ways with Anger. I got along with Todd, but not everybody did, and not everyone liked the way he played, even though he had great flicking, like he could hit
skills are sick, yeah.
Some of the headshots he had were pretty absurd and fast, and so the way he played could have been good for another team, but didn't match up well with us.
Team chemistry.
Because that's the problem with the iBuyPower guys to me is that, they have such good players, but they're, man alive.
I mean, they don't
have the right mentality.
They might need to accept things a little bit more and be a little bit more. Because you hate that vibe. I don't know if this is going on their team, but where you feel like they're constantly looking to like make an adjustment with a player or change people, or it's like it's one thing to change a role, but it's another thing to be like, okay, Skadudo needs to stop doing this and this and this. It's like, okay, maybe on that map he's overextending, or maybe on this map, but like when you're always supposed to try to be constructive to each other. But if you're always thinking like beyond that, like, oh, could we have this player on our team who would do this better? I think that can be detrimental, as we're all saying. And I think, like you said, on our team, we've obviously thought about changes in the past, but we all, like right now, we're pretty excited to keep playing as a team, and it's cool that we got Shroud on our team. There's a lot of up and coming talent. They said, why didn't you keep D-Born instead of Shroud? Some people said that, or why didn't you get I don't even know, a slew of some of the old 1.6 players that were hanging around. But we saw Shroud, and we saw a type of person that wants to kind of be loyal to a team and doesn't overanalyze what the forums say about him, and he's a pretty humble person. And like Natsu's saying, out of game, a lot of people don't analyze that on the forums, but it's a big part of being a good team is just having those roles outside of game. And
I mean, there's no way
meshing.
You can realize those things unless you've been in a team that plays competitively. And, the excessive amount of time you're spending with each other, let's say at least like 4 or 5 hours a night you're spending together. You're striving for the same goals together. You're in a lot of high stress situations together. It's
an ego thing too.
Yeah, and then there's the traveling part as well. A lot of small things.
That's the ego side of it is another thing too. Is like on our team, I know coming from 1.6 is like all of my teammates I pretty much destroyed in 1.6. Like none of these guys were near my team's levels 1.6, but coming to Go, Spencer outperforms me all the time. And for me as a player, I've been working on just seeing my role as like, I know I could outskill anybody, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to be the most impactful player every game. Even though I didn't play my best at ESO and Cologne, not for 1 second am I thinking that something's happening to my abilities. And so like for me, it's just important to constantly see the team in a bigger picture. And I think that's what we're all kind of good at doing. That's why we like Sean, that's why we like Corey, that's why we like Shroud and Spencer, because we're getting better at just seeing what needs to happen to win rounds, and whether I need to run in first, kill a guy and die, or run in last and kill a guy. I think that's, like you said, what differentiates us from iBuyPower. We're just seeing more of what needs to happen versus what we want to happen.
So I have a theory I want to run by you, Nothing, because you're the guy to ask about this. So one of the reasons why, if someone only looked at my work or looked at podcasts that we've done when we talk about your teams, I've always been quite critical of you as a player. But the way I always frame it is like, I don't just look at you and go like okay, say Hiko has a good game or whatever. I could say he's a really good player, but that's because I'm not judging him against GetRight. Okay, I'm not saying because compared to GetRight, he's not going to look as good. I've always put it like, okay, I've always thought NA's problem in the last few years is they never had that superstar player. They never had the GetRight, they never had the Forest level player. And I always used to look and go, okay, well, Nothing's the young guy who's really skilled in NA at the end of 1.6. Like, it has to be him. He's the only one who could potentially be this okay. And so if you didn't step up to that, I used to be quite critical. So in CSGO, same thing. I was always asking you, like, are you going to become the superstar? Does NA need you? I actually have a theory that I came to at G3 when I was watching Skadoodle play, which is that if I think of it, it's the same thing in NA at the moment. There's not really the one superstar. There's a bunch of good players, and sometimes different ones have good games. So in the past, we still said Nothing had to be the superstar because we still carried over the memories of how you were at the end of 1.6. And obviously, you're a different player in CSGO. So then you look and you go, okay, well, at the moment, I'd say the best NA player is probably Hiko, actually. He's the best fragger. So here's the way I would describe it. Okay, then Swag came along, and now he was like the new Nothing. So everyone's like, right, now Swag has to be the next great player. I would describe it like this. Hiko's the best fragger at the moment. Swag is the best clutcher at the moment. Nothing's like the old school player that people want to be the best player. So I actually think if NA's going to have like a superstar level player, the person it has to be is Skadoodle. What do you think of this theory? I think he's the guy where if he could really get his shit together at these big lands, he could be like a fucking Kenny S type guy.
I mean, I guess I'm not too big on like superstars. All that stuff is for the fans. I'm more about winning and hopefully eventually.
Well, if you want to win, mate, that's where you need superstar. I'll tell you the difference.
Yeah, okay. I know, but like Fnatic
Yep.
tried to recruit me in 2009. I could have joined a Swedish team. I'm just saying, like, and then maybe I would have been on one of the best teams in the world, and we would have won 10 internationals. You say, hey, look at that American. He's winning internationals. It is what it is. We try our best with what we got, and if we don't see as much as the all-seeing Thorn does, then I guess we fail. But you know, I think it's tough to have the foresight to know who's going to be a superstar. You just rely on what you see and what you know, what you talk to these guys, what kind of personality, what their abilities are, what you see happen in front of you. So I think, foresight's always
okay. Nothing.
It's tough.
Do you watch the NBA a little bit?
Not much. More NHL.
Okay, NHL then. In the NHL, the way they structure American sports is they try to get it due to the way the drafting works and the way the salary cap works. The reason that's instated is that you want every team to have at least one star player. Because the idea is then even if your team does badly, at least the fans will go to the stadium and overall the NHL itself will grow even if the team does badly. Cool. And so actually, it means that you get this scenario where every team can feel like, listen, our guy's one of the best players and maybe he could be the best if he had the right team around him. And so it gets this world created where suddenly there's like 30 star players, there's 20 star players. Yeah. And yet in reality, as a totally objective fan who doesn't have any stake in any NHL franchise, I know that Nothing knows deep down inside that like Sidney Crosby is way better than Nash, for example, right? Yeah. Like, Nash is a star player. For his team, he's a star, okay? But you know there's a difference between those two types of star. Like, one is a star who's just a good player, who is the best on his team, and he'll have games he does well, whereas the difference is someone like a Sidney Crosby, if it's in a big playoff game, that's when he'll not only be a star, but he'll come up big in the big game, right? That's what makes him a superstar. That's why I like to use those two phrases. I purposely said superstar. I didn't say star. I've no doubt Skadoodle and Hiko can all be stars in their teams. But the difference is, there's lots of great players in CSGO. Look at all the fucking stars in Hellraisers. Dosia, Markelov. The difference is, Markelov might be as skilled as GetRight, but GetRight comes up in the huge games, in the playoff games, that's where he goes crazy. Markelov, who knows? Sometimes he does. I think it's important to make a distinction between them. You don't see this point? Am I off base here, mate?
I think it's just more for the fans. I don't know. I think there are those players. It just is what it is. I don't think we're too worried.
Let me just check the pulse of the room right here. Are you one of those people who thinks that like you shouldn't say GetRight is better than Freeburg and that you should just pretend like, oh well, sometimes Freeburg's top of the score, but I guess they're both good and they both just do an equal job. What do you think?
No, I mean they're just different players. Freeburg runs in, takes damage. GetRight lurks, doesn't take damage. Sure. I mean, GetRight's a fucking animal. Freeburg's an animal. They both win.
You can't say which is a better player objectively.
GetRight is probably more elusive to play against. Makes him a little scarier.
You honestly, you're telling me in your mind you don't differentiate.
I've beaten those guys more than they've beaten me in my history. I've never been scared of those guys. I've always beaten Fnatic in 1.6 more than they beat me. I beat Nip in this game and Maps probably more than they've beaten me.
Well, then you're better than both of them, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. In my mind, I that's all that matters. And so it's like for the fans, there's just superstars and great and awesome and everything's, that's cool. I just don't give into that side of competitive sports or games.
Yeah, I guess what
here's the problem. I'll let Nato get to it in a second, but I'll just put it like this. Nothing. Here's the problem with that. If that's true, that you believe that, then I actually think that will cost you in your career. Because what will happen is you'll decide in your mind that Freeberg and Get Right are the same player, and what will happen is you'll go into a scenario where you'll have to play Get Right in a 1v3, and that's why he'll kill all 3 players, because you'll think it's just another player. Just play it like it's anyone.
Not at all. You need to know what they're good at, and I know what they're good at. It doesn't matter if I label one. Get Right's the best player in the world, sure.
What are your thoughts on this topic, Natty? The superstar versus the star topic? As a general concept,
there's obviously difference of levels of skill. It doesn't it should just be obvious.
We're not even talking about skill, though. We're talking about how you perform. The superstar comes up in the big game. Get Right was garbage in this tournament until the playoffs and until the key maps, and then he went crazy. You know?
I guess
preparation. I don't know, mindset.
What do you think, Natu?
Yeah, I guess what Duncan is trying to say is that the difference between a star and a superstar is that the superstar is more likely than not going to do some crazy shit when it comes crunch time, when it's playoffs time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's why I've always had respect for those NIP guys. It seems like Forrest and Get Right are, and in that terminology, superstars.
So could Skadoodle be that sort of person?
He has the qualities.
Yeah,
why?
He seems
what
like he has
do you think his problem is?
No, I mean he's a humble dude and he's got a lot of skill, so he's got the potential.
The thing is, I don't know him personally, so if I just look as an outsider, I can usually make guesses.
He's like a humble kid from Idaho who works at manual labor as a job, you know?
I can usually make guesses, based on people's style of play, what they might be like as a person. Okay? And what I would guess, if I had to guess, not knowing, I've never seen interviews Skadoodle, I don't know anything about it. If I had to guess what he's like, I think he's a guy where when everything's comfortable and when he's hit his first few shots, he's really confident and he really thinks like, I can do this. But if it gets to a close game, then his confidence wanes a bit, or if his teammates bag on him, or they say, where did he miss that one? Then I think that's where he's not a guy who handles that very well. What's your sense for this, Nothing?
Maybe, yeah, definitely momentum based so far. I think that could change maybe over time. He's good at, like, if you watched him play any game, he's really fucking skilled at. But in terms of the mental side of things, I haven't been his teammate before, but he seems like, yeah, it does seem like sometimes if his team's pumping him up a little bit more and he hit the first couple shots, maybe had a nice pistol round, he's probably more prone to play a better half.
Natu. You've been in all these teams for all these years.
It's like anybody, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that applies to so many players.
Well, it applies to some players, it doesn't apply to everyone. Get Right was fucking terrible. He's doing absolute garbage, but he'll still win the 1v3 to win the game. So he doesn't have to hit his first shots and have his teammate, wonderful work, Get Right, please win the 1v3. He just does it because he's a superstar. Superstars do what the fuck they want. Yeah, superstars are like Neo in the Matrix. They just bend the rules, dude. Everyone else is playing within the Matrix, you know. Hopefully it was right at the beginning of the
and you know, one of the things I think, Duncan, which is, I just want to interject really quick.
Okay.
That mindset and that superstar mindset, like you said, is something that we all actually strive for. Being able to make decisions that can serve the round well, regardless of how tense it is. And I think that is why you always see American teams complain about the practice, because I think that actually is one of the very core values of things that you want to be able to just play without not thinking, are we not up to the level? Strategically, are these guys better than us? And if you have those little thoughts looming, even if they don't pop up more than once or twice a half, those thoughts is what ultimately creates hesitation. And you know, when a player like NIP and them, they know when they play their game they are the best in the world. So having that know is what Get Right's always held onto. And when he's got to the high level, having that know is huge. And I think that's why it even made me good in my early stages when I had to play these top teams, is just by committing to what I know I could do best and not wavering. And I think the toughest part about being an American is to maintain that. When you have like a 6-month lull, I could still bring that same mindset, but to legitimately have a genuine feeling that I've been playing against the best, I see what they do, I have what I do, and I'm going to execute that. It's tough when you're not in constant competition. That's why I always say, yeah, Americans have a lot of skill, but that right there is what normally separates us, is having the mindset to be confident and execute what you know will work. And like I said, maybe that's one of the reasons, going back to the Sci-Fi Power and Cloud9 International thing, it's just one of those things where the more you could just be focused on your game and not have this random thought that, oh, maybe this is a bad play. Any hesitation. And that's what makes NIF so good. I doubt there's very little hesitation in their play. Maybe they're not always, and maybe that's when you see them do worse is when they do start hesitating, you know, when they don't maintain that confidence, which might have happened to like Gfinity or whatever.
So nothing before the internet owned Natu. Before the internet owned you, what were you gonna? What you were gonna? It was like an impassioned speech you were going into there, and then it just got cut right off. The DDoS got you.
Yeah, got down. The timing on that. But I'm just gonna sort of continue on what Nothing was talking about. The thing is that I have noticed throughout the years that I played that whenever I start thinking about like the way that I play in situations too much while I play is when I get worse. But when I play just from my backbone, not thinking about what's going on, just through my instincts, that's when I excel, and that's when I usually do the right plays and the right
and a team full of players doing that is vicious. Exactly.
So I mean, that just comes to like some people just cannot do that in high pressure situations, and some people can do it more like every single time in high pressure situations. So it really comes down to all the mental side, the psychological side of things, more than the actual skills, because there's tons of super skilled players out there. So many really, really good. Like the margin, the skill difference between these players is like super slim. Like they're like, you know, that it's like between, I would say like 2-3% between these players. But the thing is that some players just can manage the situation better than other. Very plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's normally when I struggle. Is when I feel like I wasn't fully prepared for the event, and I'm still good at shutting the thoughts out, but it doesn't give you the same type of, I think, vitality to your play as when you like don't have to shut anything out and you're just fully focused on executing, you know.
Before we drop the topic entirely, on that thing I was making the point there, the superstar thing, even though Nothing says he doesn't prescribe to that, it's not the way he thinks about the game, okay? He doesn't categorize
Well, there's like factual things, obviously. I understand I finally got your point of talk about the players who really their skills shine through even in the most tense situations. Yeah, that makes sense.
Or it doesn't even, and plus, I'll make this distinction as well, because it's an unfair one that people in sports do. In sports, they always rank the best superstar just as the one who always wins in the clutch, okay? So like the Michael Jordan guy who makes the last second shot. I actually think that
is Scottie Pippen.
Yeah, that's an aspect of it, but I think sometimes people go too far there. So for example, in the Skadoodle example, Skadoodle doesn't now have to win 1v3s to be that sort of player. Let's say he was a player who just got the frags, but he doesn't close the round. That in itself can be a star player, you know. You can be, like LeBron doesn't have to close the game to be amazing. If he puts up like 35 points and 15 assists, someone else can close the game and he could still be the superstar, you know. So I wanted to just ask Natu his thought on that topic in general. Like as a general concept, do you think like the best teams in the world have to have that superstar guy? Can you get away with not having him from all the teams you've played in over the years? Think of the ones where you had Rui or you had someone else, or, you know, what do you think of that type of breakdown?
Yeah, what I was trying to explain before is that, you know, the difference between a star player and the superstar player is that the superstar player is going to come clutch at a higher rate in a high pressure situation. Yeah, he's going to do his job. No, I mean, it comes down to the mental side of things, and some people are just more are better equipped mentally to cope with the situations than others. Plain. That's it. That's very simply the way I say it. Because the way there's so many, like most of the top players are super close to each other skill wise. You know, they know the mechanics. They know how to aim. You know, you'll see players going off left and right.
Yeah.
But the most consistent players, they're going to do those things. Are, you know, they're not going to be as many. There's just a few players that can actually do that every single time. That's, I think, the way you can separate
and apply it to their team.
Yeah,
have it be relevant to what their team's trying to do. That's why I do give Get Right in them. It's just they're obviously that's why I have so much respect for those guys. But I was earlier just discerning, like in terms of like fanfare. Okay. I don't ever care to say this guy just carries the team, but there's factual things like those guys are meant to dominate in certain fashions. Get Right is meant to close out rounds and get annoying kills that just stop the team from wanting to even try to retake. For instance, like when they're T side, they plan at B on Dust 2. Get Right's going to flank out long and kill one or two guys that pretty much make the retake impossible. And Forrest is probably going to be one of the guys coming second in a rush. That's probably just going to make sure the bomb site's clear no matter what.
So let me use those terms you just used there to kind of define what I meant by that statement at the beginning, where I listed all those players and I said, you know, like this one's the best at this one's one thing, but Skadoodle has to be the star. What I mean by that is, when I look at Hiko's game, his game is working absolutely fine. He has no deficiencies in it. He's doing about the best I could imagine him doing. He knows exactly his role in the game, and he's doing it well. Similar story with Swag. I mean, maybe he has the odd map at majors he doesn't do it well, but overall, he's just about maxing himself out. He's doing what you'd expect. And nothing, you're doing your job there. The problem is, Skadoodle's someone where I still think there's like a level he could go to. And if he can go to that level, so if he could become a Kenny S type Hauper, where he was every time at the big lights he was doing it, then that's when he could be the superstar in that sense.
He does have some great intuition in terms of opping and moving around. Like, I've seen him make some really cool, like, just decisions that got him some nice frags, triple kills. So yeah, I actually know what you're saying. We've all kind of seen that out of Skadoodle, even from the moment he started playing online, because he came from that AVA game where he was like a world champion. I don't know if you know that.
I heard he came from the game, sure.
Yeah, AVA, and he won like the world champs. Granted, what the fuck is that game? But sure. Yeah, he had played it at like he had won the world finals in like Korea and Japan twice or something. So like he had this like kind of skill, but we all also like weren't sure if he was cheating or not. So that's why I kind of liked him, because I never really thought he cheated, but I definitely liked the way that he played. He has his own little tricks and stuff. So I am curious.
Yeah, that's actually a little thing he has that's a bit kind of unique. Actually, I think he's a good mind game AWPer. So it's one thing to just be like Guardian, will just go to his spot he plays, and his skill is just shoot you really, really fast. That's the whole. There's no more thought going on.
Yeah,
there.
He's like a fraud, very slow sensitivity.
And he just tries to shoot you really fast, right? Whereas when Skadoodle plays, I remember the game they had at G3 versus Titan, and he was actually killing Titan players on the AWP shot down on Dust 2 from the suicide area. He was killing them there over and over, no matter where they jumped, what angle they jumped at, because he just like mentally he knew where they were going to be, and he was hitting them. I remember him killing Kenny S a bunch of times where no one out ops Kenny S. That just doesn't even happen. But
I think he double kicked him one time, didn't he?
But at the end of the game though, Skadoodle broke down a bit. Suddenly he was getting no kills after he'd been dominating, and then Titan closed the game out. So actually, I've got an analogy to tie in kind of the whole star thing, and actually the thing I said about the mentality of like C9 accepting who they have and just figuring out what can we do now with these players. Whereas I feel like iBuyPower has this expectation that everyone should be playing at the level they are in practice or in NA or something. I'll give you a story. Here's a sports analogy for you. So in basketball, the most winningest player ever is a guy called Bill Russell from the 1960s. And he won 11 championships. And in his teams, the key thing was he was the star player for most of them. Like he was
one of the earlier like large players.
Yeah, he was a center. He used to be a very good defensive player, a lot of rebounds, and one of his best skills actually was rebounding the ball. And so here's the story, okay? In his team, one of his later teams, when he was quite old, and his teams, as you get older and older and older, you lose good players. You don't have the same level that you did at the beginning where you might have just been dominating people. So towards the end, to win those championships, they really needed to get like the absolute maximum out of every player, because they didn't have just like overwhelming skill. And so he got this young player on his team called Don Nelson, who later on went to become a coach. And this guy, first of all, I'll put it like this. This guy was a short white guy. So immediately, in basketball, he must be a really good shooter, because that's the only way he's going to ever get into a game, right? So he was good at shooting of the shot, but he wasn't a really athletic player. He wasn't anything compared to like any of the star players. And so what happened was, in a big playoff game, Bill Russell looked over and he saw before the game, like, that guy was really nervous. And so what he did is he went over to that guy and he said to him, like, listen, in the game, I can see, like, you're worried about what's going to happen, and you're probably thinking, like, what am I going to do in the game? Like, am I going to let the team down? So he said to him, listen, in the game, on the defensive end, don't ever come back and worry about trying to get rebounds and play like the rest of us and hustle and get in the paint, Instead, every time you come back, I'll purposely watch where you would have been, and I'll get your rebounds, and you just run out and set yourself up and get in like a good position where you'll be comfortable, where if I throw you the ball there, you'll make the shot, okay? So all I want you to do is a very simple thing that I know you can do. Just go and do that. And so it sounds crazy, because like, how could you do this? I mean, obviously he could do this because he was the best rebounder, so he could actually do that, take up the slack to someone.
Yeah.
And so the idea was, he did this for this guy, and actually it has like a great fairy tale ending. That guy in the end hit like a really clutch shot at the end of the game to win the game for them. And the idea there was, yeah, Bill Russell didn't help the guy make the shot or do anything else, and maybe he might have even made them defensively worse because he didn't have a guy in defense. But the point is, he knew that guy wasn't going to be able to play to his max level because he was nervous, and it was a big moment. So what he did is take away as much of the pressure as he could and just say, listen, here's one thing you could do now. Like, you could hit this shot if you were open, couldn't you? Yeah, okay, go do that. To me, that's the difference in mentality between like accepting that your teammates have failings, whereas it feels like iBuyPower are in denial that they have failings. They don't, but I bet right now they don't buy this story that they always fail at majors. They think, oh, it was just unlucky and jet lag, and if that one round on that. and next time we'll get him. The fact they don't accept it, to me, is why they haven't got over that hurdle, you know. If they accepted it and they were like, okay, maybe someone in the team is in the wrong position, like when he's in a pressure mode, he can't do the job I've given him, that's, I think, where you'd progress forwards. If anyone wants to jump in on that, they can. If not, we'll go to the next topic. It's up to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think like this has been great points to bring up this whole podcast, is just like roles and really, really getting into them and accepting it and sacrificing to make that role work, even if you don't do something else great. And I think that is what good teams learn to do. And so I do like that analogy, actually. One of the few I've liked of yours from the sports world.
Yeah, like the few major tournaments I've enjoyed watching you play. Okay, anyway.
Wait, now you've watched them. I think you've had fun no matter what.
By the way, I actually, for all the butthurt people watching right now, I know Jordan and we can handle this, okay? It's not a big deal that we're just talking shit to each other.
Everyone's like, wow, Thorn's a dick.
Exactly.
He is a dick, guys. If you ever find out where he lives, go burn his house.
I watch Nothing stream. He's the nicest guy ever in the store, and guys just going down on him like... It's not his fault he didn't top frag that game. He was ill. He was in Poland. He'd had some bad fries.
You want to hear me say that?
Okay. Anyway, let's go.
Let me touch on the Skadoodle thing. The Skadoodle thing, like as an example, there's a certain like a learning curve to things. For example, let's think about GeT_RiGhT as a player. He's been around for like 7 years in the top of the scene, pretty much. At first,
6 right now.
I mean, he was looking for his place, and he wasn't
we talked about that in Poland or in Germany recently.
It takes a while for you to really like get up there. So I would give a player like Skadoodle, let's say, a couple of years, and then we'll get back on this topic of how he is as a player and what has he become.
Well, it's like there's also even people deny this as well, because the reason why I make a lot of these points, okay, is because people have these really bad and people think I'm going overboard with my analysis, but I think people are going underboard with their analysis. So when you ask people about tournaments, okay, and you say, for example, why didn't C9 go to the final and win, they won't say, well, they had problems here and they couldn't win on this. What they'll say is, oh, you know, on any given day the top teams can all beat each other, it wasn't our day, and you know, this player wasn't playing how he usually should. No, the storyline's quite consistent for both these teams, iBuyPower and C9. You look at how they perform at ESEA LAN, they perform the same way every time. iBuyPower wins the LAN, does really well. C9 does pretty well, comes second or third, but always lose to iBuyPower. You go to the majors, same exact story again. C9 always upsets a better European team, better in the world rankings that is, wins maps off them or wins a map off them, goes to the playoffs, and what happens every time? They run into some really good team like Fnatic before or NiP now, and they always fall at the same sort of stage of the playoffs. Like, if you actually look in history, the stories play out the same way. Dignitas has never been to a final ever in CSGO. Did you know that? They've never been to a major final of any big tournament of International 1. That's not a coincidence. Something's happening to that team when they get to a semi-final where it doesn't matter who they play or what sort of game it is, they break down in some way. They're the only connecting factor. So this is a point I want to go into as we go to some of the other teams now. If we look at a team like Dignitas, at G3, when they beat NiP, I thought, like, wow, well, if they've beaten NiP, because NiP was the one who always beat them, you know, and held them back, I thought, if they can beat NiP now, sure, yeah, they can win this whole tournament, you know. They can definitely beat Virtus.pro, who hadn't been playing very good. They could definitely beat Titan if they play them. But no, they fell in the semi-finals again. This time, they were looking great again. They only narrowly lost to you guys in a game either team could have won. They go to the playoffs. They beat Epsilon fairly easily. Like, okay, we're going to the semi-finals. It's a new Fnatic lineup. This is our time, right? If there's ever a time for Dignitas to win an event, it's going to be this one. Nope, out in the semis again. What do you think of this topic? Like, what do you think of Dignitas, Natu? This same story happening. Why do you think?
I mean, looking at the roster, they're really, really young guys. I think most of them, except for Fetish, are like not even 20. I think they're like 18, 19,
yeah,
20.
I think at least 3 of them. All 4, in fact. I think AZ's quite young as well. You might be right. There might be 19 or 20.
Exactly. And that might be a big factor in that, you know. Especially that now that it's happened so many times before, it really gets into their head and plays a part, especially when things go rough, it's not going their way. They're probably going to be, you know, thinking, not maybe saying it out loud, but thinking themselves, oh shit, it's going to happen again. We're going to be out in the semis again. Because I do think they have all the assets, they have all the necessary tools to be up there to win a tournament. But, you know, it seems, once again, one of those things where mental stuff comes into play.
The crazy thing is, I'm not even exaggerating. On paper, Dignitas might be the most skilled team in the whole world. Like, if Fetish is the in-game leader, okay, so take him out of the equation. The other 4, like, dupreeh, Device, and Xyp9x can all be super sick aimers. They could, in theory, all of them could be like one of these star players I'm talking about. But actually, that's their big problem is like when they get to those semi-finals, nearly always 2 of those 3 guys don't show up, sort of. Like the one I always point to, I'm afraid, is Device, because I've noticed that's kind of a trend actually, where he's the one who, if it's a group stage game or it's a round of 8 game, Device is one of the best players in the whole world. He can dominate a game, he can take over the AWP, he can rifle, he can do everything. He's amazing. But if you go to the semi-finals, that's where he's always the guy I see who just doesn't. He just drops off. His level just drops off a cliff. You know. You play these guys, Natty. What do you think of their team overall?
They're a super hard team to play for the same reasons you were just mentioning there. I mean, the way, like, when their self-confidence is up at the right level, they're going to be super hard to play against. Not only are they super structured and, like, have really good strategies to rely on, but they also have really, really super good role aimers in that team and people that can do, you know, everyone, all 5 players can do crazy things on that team. So it is, for me, it's always been one of those teams that I wouldn't want to face in a tournament.
I mean, nothing. You played them in this tournament in a great game, and obviously they looked like they were in really good form in the group stage. Did you think this team was going to the final when you saw their draw?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, the thing is like, I noticed they have really good CT sides, but their T sides sometimes lack.
Yep.
And I don't know, like for us, we felt like we matched up well against them just because we're both kind of like, we can both just make random plays and stuff. But I definitely think coming into this tournament, it's a team that we could even model ourselves off of. Even though we had confidence to outshoot them, we definitely were like, we kind of need to learn from Dig a little bit because, I mean, and they might have even learned from us in a weird way, even though I doubt that too much. But I think they're definitely intimidating to play against on their CT sides. And I've only literally played them on that one map, so I really don't know from playing them too much more.
Here's the thing, actually. I'll make a good point here. Well, but my own critic there. Yeah, I'm going to make a really good point now. No, I mean, I've got a point to make, okay, which is when you said that thing, actually, that's the trend I've always noticed. That's always made me a bit skeptical of Dignitas, actually, which is that their strength, everyone agrees, okay, amazing on CT sides. Like, if you face them on Nuke, that's why they're going to fucking own you.
That's why I thought whoever started CT versus them and Titan might have won. Like, okay. I thought even if Titan started CT in that group, they could have maybe put it out.
Titan's a great team on Nuke. So, the strange thing about their team, though, is, yeah, they're awesome on CT sides. And I could even believe there's a tactical aspect to their CT sides. Like maybe Fetish makes really good rotation calls, or maybe he tells them which site to overstack. That's definitely a role of an in-game leader that can affect the CT side.
Or maybe they're just more comfortable letting the other team make the move.
But one of the things is, in general, if you have really skilled players and you're really good on CT side, that tends to be because a lot of CT side is skilled play. It's individual play. It's like, how does that guy play his one spot and how does he adapt independent of the team, you know? And then how's he doing? Is he picking the right angle for how good his aim is today? Is he doing the wrong thing? So when they dominate because these aimers are awesome on CT sides. But considering everyone gives Fetish all this credit for being this brilliant tactician, I don't know, man. I'm a bit skeptical if you have that many tools and you're not doing really well on T sides. Because for me, I've always said this in Counter-Strike, the best teams in the world actually win on T side. Because even a bad team, if they're on a biased CT side map, can get at least 9 or 10 rounds in it. It's still doable even for a bad CT team. Whereas the best teams, it's really hard to get those T rounds on maps like Nuke, you know, or in the past like Train. That's where if you're tactically good, that's what's really going to get you over the hump in those big games. Do you have why do you think they're not so good on T sides, Natu? Do you agree with the theory?
I would say they probably should. They should probably play more loose. From what I've gathered, Fetish is the type of leader who really wants things to be really structured. Sort of what, you know, Existence, Titan, or especially very games, the early days, they used to be super structured. I guess it's one of those things where they probably want to be using more of the individual skill that they do have.
Yeah, that could be a good point. Yeah.
And really rely on that instead of, you know, doing super set strats.
In terms of other teams, let's think of another one.
Fnatic.
Yeah. What about the new Fnatic lineup? I mean, they could have gone to the final, actually, the G3 LAN. They did pretty well against Titan there.
They have this weird, like, scrimmy, like, they have a really good blend of, like, structure and randomness, but they're
hard read. They're a hard read.
Here's the funny thing.
They could have beaten NiP. I mean, they fucking TK'd and fucked up that whole T-side Inferno, for sure.
I made this point to Devilwalk, actually, when I used to criticize his teams. I used to say, like, The problem with that style of play, the Pronax style, where it is just sort of like a pug style, where you're trying to just read the opponent and do things like in the moment, not necessarily like you didn't. It's not the existence style where at the beginning of the round you have this planned and you're going to only change if you have another tactic set that you're going to. It's more like a free-flowing style. The problem with that style, I thought, was that the old Fnatic lineup, I think they maybe lacked star players or some skill or something to actually get that done each time. It only works as a surprise factor. Whereas actually, with this lineup they have now, this lineup looks pretty strong in terms of like skilled players. Like I think those two new guys did awesome that tournament, right? What did you think of them, Olafem and Crims? It seemed like Crims especially, I thought he played out of his skin that tournament.
Yeah, I do agree. They're both really.
With the exception of that Freeberg ace on Inferno, where Freeberg peaked Olaf with 5 HP and Olaf didn't hit him. Yeah. That was about the only fuck up I saw Olaf do, like firsthand at least.
I agree.
But I didn't watch all the games, but they seem scary.
Nothing. I want to pull you up there. I mean, why are you being so critical of Devilwalk, man? He was a great friend, and if they remove him, they definitely won't do as well if they get, like say Olafem and put him in the lineup. Yeah, okay, mate. They kicked him out the team. Come on, man.
I don't. What are you talking about?
I'm making fun of the fact that the Fifth Flower thing of like, well, don't ever remove him. They're great friends, and even if you put Olafem, who says they'd do better? Well, like Fnatic's an example where they just did do that, mate. They did exactly that thing and they did better. But here's the reason why. Yeah, here's the key thing. The reason they kicked their players is because they had finally realised that we're definitely not going to win now. Now we're not even getting to the semis anymore. But so at that point, it makes sense to take a risk.
Dude, that doesn't say that that's going to apply to every single situation.
No, I'm saying it can, though. You can't rule it out.
It can, obviously.
Yeah, well, obviously. It's not like I'm just saying you and Tommy are wrong for every statistically thing you say. I just say you guys are dickheads.
In what sense?
In the sense that you speak the truth so bluntly when you don't always need to like that.
Okay, give me lessons here. How could you phrase it differently and say the same thing?
Or not even the truth. You're just like your opinion. It's just like
we got to the root of our problem. Thank you, Nothing. Well done. Our problem as analysts is that we keep giving our opinion as our analysis, whereas we should just say nothing.
No, but it's like congratulations to the 4 players of NIP. Like really?
That's not me, so I don't know why that's got anything to do with me.
Yeah, you and Tommy are fucking might as well be married to each other.
You know what's funny? I'm actually the person who changed Lopez's mind on that whole Fifth Flower thing. He used to say that he must be cut. Like, what's the point in having this guy? Just get someone else. But I made the point to him, this key point I've made a million times on this topic, which is that there is a rule that you should never break up winning lineups once you know they can, unless you know they can't win anymore. So if with the Fnatic example, at that point you knew, right, okay, the limit for this team is maybe if everything went right, they'd make the semi-final and lose. They were never going to win a huge tournament again. It played itself out. So at that point, it's worth the risk of trying to get the Olafem guy in and see if he makes it better, okay? Because you're not losing that much. The actual risk isn't that high. Now for Nip, if you read my piece, I didn't say at the end of the piece, so let's cut Fiflar in. This is time to kick him out. I said this is probably the best time that so far has presented itself. Because even when you won the tournament, it was barely, and you really could have lost every series, and you have had a really bad strong off form. But even so, personally, if it was me, I'd probably wait 2 more events. And then after those 2 events, I think you'd have a pretty good idea then. Because either maybe you win one of those 2 events, and then don't worry about it. You're winning the team, you can stick together.
Yeah, for all I know, maybe they're making a change right now. I don't know.
No way of knowing.
Just saying, like, I doubt yet, but because they won, but.
You're so full of shit, dude. When you watch sports, I guarantee you do the same thing. You go, oh, you know when this team loses in like the conference final every year? Oh, they should replace that guy, and if they had this better player, that'd get them over the hump. And why are they paying this guy too much? He's doing the wrong role, and you don't sit back like, well, if there's nothing good to say, don't say anything, children. Did you do your homework? No, time for Sunday school.
Well, I guess I'm just not one of those people in general, but I like analysts, and it's cool that people like spend so much time looking beyond like what players look at. It's just the fact that you guys, I don't know, it seems like everyone was harping on it so many times. Like, great, Fifth One didn't get a lot of frags. He's not contributing a lot. Every tournament is mentioned like it's like they need to replace. It's one thing to observe something. It's another thing to give suggestion. And I think when Tommy always gives these suggestions, like this is what they should do. It's like, okay, well.
Why is that a problem? Does he control the universe or something? No, he's just a guy giving his opinion. If they don't like it, you know what they can do?
I mean,
as far as I know.
Ever since Tommy became an atheist, it's been tougher to talk to.
As far as I know, he doesn't have a gun against Fifth Lawrence's head and then force him to sit like Malcolm in Clockwork Orange with fucking...
No, of course not.
Things under his eyes, wake and watch his analysis. People don't need to read what Tommy or you say.
Doesn't have to at all. They don't need to either, but it's like... It doesn't make you any less annoying.
So you're annoyed by this sort of analysis?
I'm just, I don't like just just how bitter you guys sound when you talk. It's just like I just don't even like reading it.
You know what I don't like? Do you want me to? Shall I now go on the offensive here? Because the problem with this sort of argument, I've been very fair, right? I've let you state your case, and what you've done is
I'm not stating a case. I just get annoyed. I haven't even thought much about it. I just know how I feel when you talk. And Tommy,
you've created a discussion here where I've let you set the terms. So the terms are the way we criticise Fiflarn, and should he be cut? And is that even allowed? What you're essentially saying is, should we even do that? Probably not, in your opinion. Okay, let me go the other way. Here's the reason why I will always be critical of players like Fiflarn and players who aren't superstars. And why I'll ask you the question I asked before: is Get Right better than Freeberg? Because what happens is you present it as though you're being a really nice guy. You're trying not to be mean to Fiflarn, and you just want everyone to get along. And can't we just say everyone's good? No. Here's why we can't say everyone's good. Nothing. Because there's only a limited amount of credit that can go around in a game as to who won the game and who did the best and who did the worst. So what happens is when you give that credit to Fiflarn that he doesn't deserve, you have to take it from someone. So what people don't notice is by telling everyone,
I guess if they need credit, I mean, if they need that in the first place,
by telling everyone,
who cares if they won? I just like, who needs credit?
By
I hope
telling
a lot of players
everyone,
don't need an
you're the one
analyst
getting
to tell
butthurt
them
that we're taking credit away from him. Anyway, so to give credit to
I'm getting bothered with
Fiflarn,
the way you guys talk. It
to
just
give
sounds
credit
like
to
girls.
Fiflarn, you steal credit from Get Right. Get Right's an amazing player who has carried some games on his own, but you would say no.
Credit from him? He gets voted best player in the world like every year.
You steal credit when you say, nah, Fiflarn's, some games Fiflarn top
I'm not
5,
saying
they all
he's a
contribute
great
the same
player.
amount.
I just don't go stand out in the fucking center of a room and say, yeah, you guys should do something about that. Like, I'm sure they know what they need to do and what they don't need to do.
That's a ridiculous statement right there. Oh, well, by that logic, I'm sure I by power know what they need to do. So don't worry about it, guys. You'll probably win the next major. Every CS team knows what they need to do, and yeah. Great tautology there. So because they do what they do, then they know what they need to do. Okay. Doesn't every fucking game you lose, like, we did something wrong on that round, we didn't know that we were going to do this.
I guess I'll just hold by my original statement. I guess it's just annoying to listen to, that's all.
Well, feel free to tune the fuck out.
Oh, I normally don't.
Hit that little red phone call now, mate, and we can continue the rest of your evening with no annoyance necessary.
Yeah, well, so far it hasn't been too annoying.
Oh, okay, well, see if you can hang in there a little bit longer. It's sort of like major tournaments, mate. Try and last till the final. If you can stay till the end, that's when you win, okay? Anyway, Natu, we're good friends. How you doing over there, mate?
We're still everything's still happening.
Keep puzzled here for a while. What am I doing here?
To be honest, I've talked about this with Tom before, and you guys definitely out-logic me. Like, you guys definitely out.
I don't know why I'm put with Lopez on this. I have different opinions to Lopez.
I'm just saying, you guys say, like, you guys both like to be outspoken and say exactly, and I love that. I don't think you should hide from, like, saying what you want. I just say it's just. I guess, and then to be honest, you probably have been more fair lately. I was actually giving Tommy more shit recently because he says a lot. He's been calming down a lot, and it's cool. And at least he says stuff like, Fiflarn's a great guy, and he just don't think he's a great CS player. Okay, it's fine. So I was just reflecting that it's like, I'm sure a lot of people agree that it's annoying to hear flaming a lot. It's one thing to just like point out.
Is it flaming to say that a team who aren't winning might do a little bit better in the game if they replace a player? Is that like the worst thing in the world? I don't understand where the flame is there.
No, I mean, everyone's thought that, and I know so it's like, I mean, we all said that at one point. Like, look, Fiflarn doesn't play well all the time. I'm sure they could get a player, and if they were meshed with that new player well, and that guy was more skilled, they might even be more scary. So there's obviously a lot of truth to it. It's not like you're wrong.
Let me do the same thing again. I'll now set the terms of the conversation. So what I'll ask you about Fiflarn is this: nothing. So all your logic is, well, they have really good chemistry with him. He's a really good guy. He doesn't need to do those jobs. Okay, maybe Get Right gets enough frags that he doesn't.
I just said.
Okay, but this is how people like you describe it. Okay, that's why he should be in the team, because he has good chemistry. They've always won in the past. They always figure out a way to come back again. He doesn't need to frag because he has Forrest and Get Right and amazing fraggers who can make up that difference. These are all true facts. But let me ask you this: let's say NiP lose the next 4 tournaments in a row, and they only make the semis or the round of 8 and they go out. Would you then be in a position where you were allowed to say Fiflarn should be cut?
Well, I mean, you can say it whenever you want. I don't know. Like,
can you see the point I'm making, though? None of those things would have changed, and yet they'd have lost 8 more tournaments. So your logic's impossible to ever beat, because he will always be great friends with them. He will always not get as many frags, but it won't be his fault because Get Right's supposed to get more, and he'll always be a clutch player who's going to be great. So the problem with that is that's not analysis. So you're not actually giving an analysis for him to stay.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to, I don't know. I don't mind your analysis when you say, like, when you point out things. Like, it's not bad to, Like, I don't mind when you point out things. I was just saying, I guess sometimes how you present it it just seems bitter.
That's because you're a player, mate. I'm sure if we got Dignitas members or iBuyPower members on now, they would actually be quite upset, or they'd be really annoyed at me that I've said that, like, well, I've just said that both of them choke at certain stages. iBuyPower choke in group stages of majors, and Dignitas always choke in the semis. I've no doubt they'd be like, you're wrong, he was just having a bad game, and you don't know what happened. And listen, here's the problem, though. As long as they deny that ever happens, then they're never going to fix the problem. You have to accept the problem exists to be able to fix it, right?
Yep. I mean, and I've heard that, you know, it's, I mean, I'm sure Nip reads and watches all this stuff, and I'm sure they read and have listened to your analysis. Yeah,
I mean, listen, as an outsider,
listening to bitter analysis sometimes, and you're not.
How is that bitter, for fuck's sake?
No, but you're not. I'm just saying, you just. Even like right now, like I could tell, I just might be saying that, may obviously get irritated, and I don't actually have a problem with what you say a lot of the time. I defend you a lot to my friends. I'm like, Thorin's really just trying to get to the bottom of things.
Here's the funny thing: people think. I'll give you a good example here. Nothing. The reason why a lot of American fans don't like me is because I will say stuff like, "I think iBuyPower is overrated." Because people, here's the problem: when iBuyPower wins the SCA LAN and they beat good teams like Titan or. Well, they didn't beat Nip this time, but they place ahead of really good teams. People want to say, right, the next logical step is iBuyPower can be a top 5 team in the world, and who knows, maybe they could win ESL 1. Whereas obviously my analysis is going to be no, because I've seen they get to the same hump every time, and something goes wrong, therefore they're not going to win and they're overrated. Now the problem there is people don't want to just believe that that's analysis. They want to believe, right, you must hate American teams.
An opinion or something. No, yeah. And
do you think I hate complexity?
No, that's why I defend you sometimes. Is I know it's just
I remember
maybe I am blending you and Tommy too much.
Here's the thing, okay? Back in the day when Frod's complexity team was the best team in the world, I wasn't like bitter against them and trying to downplay that they were the best team and he's not that good.
I understand.
I don't care what country someone's from, mate. If they're really good, I give them the credit they deserve. That's my point. I don't try to take credit from anyone, mate. I'm trying to give everyone the credit they deserve. And sometimes that means you don't give credit to someone who's a bit overrated, unfortunately.
I like the fact that you try to read between the lines. I honestly like most of what you do. I was just saying the fifth learn topic alone. It seemed like you and Tommy were like tag teaming him for like months, and I was just like, that seemed a little bitter. But
I think why is the Fifth Lauren thing hitting a nerve with you? Why do you give a fuck about what someone says about Fifth Lauren? He's not in your team.
No, I just seems like a cool dude, and I know that has nothing to do with his ability to help a team, obviously. Right? He's a cool dude. You know. President might be a cool dude. It might be a terrible decision maker for a country or something. Whatever. I honestly just said that my only real point was nothing. I guess nothing beyond the fact that for a while, and I guess it was more from Tommy because I dealt with this with Tommy firsthand, being his teammate.
Yeah.
You know, he spoke a lot of truth when he was on our team, and you know, truth hurts, right?
Sure.
So I liked hearing it for the most part, but sometimes it was just like. Definitely could have said that a different way.
Listen, I'll even tie this in because you both played with him. Actually, Lurpis, and I think he would admit this, I think, from talking to him in the past. I've had this conversation with him many times, especially once he retired and it wouldn't be like a touchy subject. He actually was an example of a dazed type leader where he actually didn't have the best leadership. Now listen, he wasn't like super negative, but he would like be a little bit passive aggressive. He
shut himself out like on our team. It was hard for him on our team.
Like say it was a T side and he's calling strats that usually work for your team, and like 3 or 4 rounds in a row they just fail completely. Unfortunately, if he was like a Khan type leader, then his sort of approach would be like, okay, like we can't keep doing that. That's not working. Like we have to go to something else. And you know what, guys? Like keep your morale up. Like we can still win this game. Whereas actually, unfortunately, Lupus was a bit passive aggressive. Okay, he'd sort of be like, he'd get a bit quiet, or he'd just like call the same strat over and over, even though it wasn't working. As if like, come on, guys, we can do this.
Well, there was a point one time when we were playing like Navi on Inferno, I think at Arbalest.
Yeah, it's a famous example.
Mouse Sports, right? When him and like Fraud didn't say one word the whole half. We just good for nothing, kind of like. Sure. Stepped in and just started like, yo, I think we should do something. Like, I think we should run a strategy. Like, we just started the round with no one talking.
So, I mean, that's the thing. The point, what's funny about this topic is, it's actually quite common that leaders are like this. I always said in CS, the problem is the in-game leader. Maybe Natu can talk this because he's been in so many teams. The problem with in-game leader is that, okay, in League of Legends, okay, they actually don't have one shot caller always. And now they have a coach outside the game and have an analyst. And the idea is what they've done.
Another convo.
They've taken all these responsibilities and they've given it to different people who are good at it, right? Whereas in CS, what we do is we say, okay, every team, no matter who they are, has to have a tactician in-game. And so even if he's not good at tactics, someone has to do it, right? So he's a tactician. And now not only that, he's not only the tactician, the guy calling what we do, but then he leads us. Like, he's supposed to tell us and keep our motivation up, and he's supposed to tell everyone what to do, and he's supposed to know who to congratulate and who to give a pat on the back. And
it's a little obnoxious.
That's a lot of stuff to do for one guy. There's very few people in history, I think, can actually do all those roles, you know? Like, I think even great players like Khan, okay, for example, Khan was great at some of these aspects. There's some aspects of tactics he wasn't that good at, actually. Meanwhile, someone like Ave was amazing at certain tactical things. I don't think he was that good in terms of the leadership. Like, he wasn't like the pep guy who, like, got your spirits up. What do you think on this topic, Nati? Because it's a complicated one, right?
It is super complicated. And for example, when you're talking about Tommy, I wouldn't have him as a director of human resources on my company, that's for sure. He's the type of guy who...
But he would do the accounting, and he would make sure the people...
Yeah, that's for sure. He'd be cool with that. He'd be good with that. But, I mean, he can be an asshole as an example. But at the same time, you know, he's not going to be an asshole all the time. He's still really good at what he does.
I've had some fun times with Tommy.
But for example, when I was playing with him in that 69 and 28 E team, my role sort of was to be the secondary guy who would help him out in situations where he would be running out of ideas, or, you know, when I can pick up on things, you know, on different side of the map, thinking, okay, this might work and stuff. Right? So I think the same mentality probably applies nowadays to a lot of teams. We do that nowadays with our team. I'm sure a lot of teams do that on other teams as well. Yeah. It's one guy that makes a big.
Does Fiffler do that ever? I was wondering. I mean, that seems like one of the only logical reasons.
I don't know if he does it in game, but I know out of the game, I think he has some tactical input. You know, I think maybe he helps them design stuff and scout. Yeah.
I know Good for Nothing for sure helped Tommy with that in terms of.
Well, Lopez has even admitted that's something that he thinks he needed in teams. He needed the guy who could sort of... Like, he used to say of Natu, that when Natu joined the 69N team, if we're being honest, Natu, that was like when actually your skills weren't that great anymore. You weren't like a top player anymore. You were like the worst player on the team in terms of skills, right?
Probably, at the time.
But the difference is, that was a team full of... I'll just use like a modern word, like toxic individuals, people who would just like fucking argue, and they would just like, oh, fuck you, and just like in the middle of games. So the key thing Natu could do was be like the morale guy and be the guy who's like friends with everyone and can keep this guy and listen, I can talk to this guy if this guy can't talk to you, and keep the team together. The glue guy, right? That's what you used to do in that team.
The funny thing with that lineup was that we actually had to like make a certain sitting order at lands
to keep people away from each other. Exactly,
to make things work. So I had to like sit between certain people, and Tommy would sit between certain people to be like neutral guys. So things would, you know, the train would go moving forward.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting because what's funny is that's like a side of CS that people don't see. Like a famous example I've always given, and people think I do it to be like to steal credit from Khan, but it isn't, okay? You know, in Fnatic, the famous thing was DSN used to be the secondary caller guy like this, who sometimes, if things were going wrong and Khan couldn't figure out the right strat, he'd just say something like, hey, maybe we should just do like an alley push this time. I think that's the right one. And actually, usually Khan did the same thing. He sort of like, okay, I'll give him that responsibility. Like, if he has a good call and he speaks up, he probably has, there's something behind it, okay, so we'll go with that. I think it's quite a good way to disperse things. Do you do it in your team, Nothing? Because, I mean, if you've got Sean Gares as well as Semphis, do they play off each other like that at all?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, since Semphis started calling, though, I think we've since we've switched our lineups a couple times, we've kind of just tried to keep it too simple so it doesn't get over too many voice channels, too many thought processes crossing each other. But I think it's something that we'll keep implementing for sure, because Semphis himself isn't like a leader type, but he definitely has. He thinks a lot about the game.
Strategically, he's good.
Yeah, he likes to sit back and just premeditate a lot, but he also likes to keep it simple. So I think we're going to try to maintain that simplicity, but I think it will only get better the more we all give input.
No, I mean, it's like Ghostbusters. You've got to be careful about crossing streams. Anyway, old school joke there. Nothing wasn't alive when that movie came out.
That's like, I don't know if I even born
anyway.
I love Ghostbusters.
So let me think, another good team to talk about, because I want to get to Nip last in terms of stuff, because obviously they won the tournament. So okay, LDLC is a good one. LDLC, here's the storyline I had for LDLC. I thought they were always a solid team. To me, they were always like a 5th to 8th level team. Like, I never ever thought they had a chance to win a big tournament or whatever. And then actually what's funny is, you know that DreamHack Valencia tournament that happened recently, where Epsilon played Hellraisers in the semi-final, and then Shox 16-0'd the third map, and then they went on to the final, and then Epsilon lost to LDLC. I remember thinking to myself, wow, I hope LDLC buy Epsilon a whole shit ton of beers, because they would have gotten destroyed by Hellraisers if Hellraisers had gone with that. So I was thinking of that tournament. I don't give too much credit to LDLC. I think Hellraisers failed there, okay. But actually, if you look at this tournament here, LDLC was playing great. They played better, in the same way as Cloud9 played better than NiP in the series, but lost because of the way the scoring system works. LDLC played better than NiP in the semi-final, but lost. Thoughts, Natu?
Well, I mean, before this tournament, I was expecting LDLC to finally make that hump over the quarterfinals that they've been struggling with before. Like, I had this gut feeling. It just came down to I played at the Assembly Asus ROG tournament just some weeks ago. That was like a couple of weeks before the ESL one, and there was a mixed team with Apex and Kaylee playing there. Yep. And just having played them there, like, and seeing how they played and how well like they were performing individually, and having seen them play right before, I just had this feeling that they would actually, finally make the semifinals and maybe even go further than that. This is just me, like the way I felt it. There's no logic behind this, but it's just purely the way I saw it, like the gut feeling that I got from the way I saw them playing.
I mean, if we're being real, the truth that all the pro players know that no one says in public is that LDLC is like the most online team in the universe, okay? On the internet, they're fucking magical. And so that was always the reason why in the past there was no reason to think they'd be really, really good. They were good, they were solid, they'd always make like round of 8, or maybe they could make a semi-final every now and then. But you always felt like, okay, they're never going to perform as well as they do online. And actually, unfortunately, Apex used to be a victim of this. He was the guy who online had one of those magical deagles that like is a fucking AWP and like hits people no matter even if he's running away. He had one of those, okay. But then online, he was just an okay player. That guy, if he actually has his shit together, can be a very good player right now too.
Yeah, exactly. He was destroying things at the ESL One, from what I could see, especially on the quarterfinals. I didn't see the semifinal against NIP that much of, so I'm not sure how he performed there. But before, Apex was really shining for me, and he is truly like super talented player, super caliber player.
So LDLC is the team you would have played nothing if you'd gone to the semis. What did you think of them? Did you get to see much of them? Do you know much about them as a team?
Sorry, I had to turn up my volume. Say that again. I've been deathmatching.
You would have played LDLC if you'd gone to the semis. What do you think of them as a team? Do you know much about them?
No, honestly, not a lot. We've had some decent success against the French hoppers, but I mean, Apex is a guy I talk to every LAN. He's a great player. I don't know. I felt like the only thing that we really had going for us is they don't know a lot about how to play against us. So I felt like we would have had a decent chance against them playing, especially if we didn't have to play the customs. I think we could have pulled it off. But at the same token, I watched them play, and they definitely surprised me. I didn't think they were that strong, and I was definitely surprised.
Sure. Okay, so another team is Virtus Pro. Now, Virtus Pro is so confusing to me now, so I want to get your take on this. Like, I realize if you look at their style of play, they're not really they're not that great tactically as a team, but they just have that style where, like, I hate the way people overuse momentum and stuff, but their team is like that. And I mean it in a sense of, like, it's almost not even momentum, it's like their confidence level. Like, once their confidence when it's at its max and they have no hesitation, they take shots that are like retarded to take. Like, you shouldn't take these shots, and if you tried them when you were doing badly, you'd get owned. So to me, that's why they either do amazing and fucking win the tournament, or they do just bomb. What do you think?
Well, you know what's kind of ironic about that statement too is when they were playing LDSC on that Dust 2 game, when they were up, what was it? Weren't they up like 13-9 or something, or 14-9?
I think they were up big on one map, yeah.
Yeah, 14-9.
I had like Pasha and Snacks like making faces to me in the crowd and stuff, like they were kind of joking around with me against, and they ended up losing that map, and you saw their faces change real quick. But like, they're great players, and like you said, the momentum shifts sometimes. I think they might have got a little overexcited versus LDLC and just thought a couple of simple things would work. They like ran out mid one round, and they looked really confident, and then all of a sudden they got wiped out, and then they tried it again and they got wiped out, and then they hit A with like barely any nades and got wiped out. But Virtus Pro is a scary team when they play within their limits, and they let those moments come like more naturally.
Like, did you see them at G3? Nothing. Did you watch that at all?
Not a lot. Not.
Because the thing is, when they were at their best at G3, when they were in the playoffs, like really rolling, they were like, I don't think anyone could beat them if they play like that. But the key thing is, I don't think you can play like that consistently. I think that's their problem, actually. That's why I don't think they'll ever be the clear-cut number one. You know, even if they win a big tournament, I don't think they're ever going to win like 2 tournaments in a row or come top 2, 3 tournaments in a row. I don't think that style of play works that much because they're almost just like they just outfrag you basically. They don't win by like genius tactics picking you apart. They just outfrag. They bully you. You know. What do you think, Natu? You want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean,
Just deathmatch.
You were talking about the momentum thing, and I do agree. Like the way you see, like Taz, for example, like he's getting excited. He's gonna try to get you down, your morale down, and stuff like that. But I mean, the thing is that with those guys, it's like Pasha, Snacks, Bialy, and then Neo, Taz, obviously, but especially Pasha. He is a magical player when he's really on his game, and he's going to be the key factor. I think when he's on his game, VP, you don't want to play VP.
And then it opens up like Snacks does some really cool stuff. He has some really cool plays.
Some wacky rounds, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's another thing as well. It goes on the other side. I think the other side's key as well is that when their team is doing super well, they're the most intimidating team to me because their style is like, what the fuck do you do against that? Like on CT side, they're just raping you whenever you go on the site. On T side, they're just rushing in and headshotting you all instantly. So that's really hard for people confidence-wise to play against. But I also think the teams who can get confidence themselves against them, that's where you can beat them. Like that's why I think you can break them down a bit. You can put it back on them in a sense.
Well, like when we played them at ESA Land, they were blatantly like tired and like out of it. Seemed pretty easy to play against them compared to other times we have.
I mean, one of those guys had just come right off the plane, right, to play the game.
Yeah. So when they're not fully into it, they might even be similar. Like we might be similar to them, rather, where we really need to make sure everyone's energy levels are high.
So nothing. All American fans again got really mad at people like me if I dared to suggest that maybe ESEA LAN results were a little bit inflated because, Na'Vi had a stand-in and then Virtus Pro had a guy arrive and come straight off the plane and play. Yeah. Now listen, NIP, there's no excuse for NIP. NIP just lost. They were just beaten and the other teams played better. But it made it look like the NA teams were maybe better than they were overall. Was that unfair? Because if you look now, it looks like this tournament.
Well, that's fair because, right? I mean... Well, yeah, of course it's fair. I mean, it comes back to just the basic fact that we aren't the main competitors in general. We're at a disadvantage living in America, and I think that, not to make an excuse, but I think I wouldn't even argue 2 seconds that those results were a little inflated. I mean, even talking to the NIP guys out of game, they were just like a weird mental state they were in for the ESA Land. They just didn't seem in their main form, talking to Get Right and the guys and Forrest, just about some personal things that they were going through that maybe took away from their focus a little bit.
So now that you're in Cloud9 and think you have a better organization behind you, is it not possible to do like the old EG style, like every tournament, couple of weeks boot camp in Sweden, get your practice level to the level of the other teams, the Europeans, and then make it even the playing field that way? Nothing.
Yeah, well, we're gonna try. I still don't think it fully evens the playing field because you kind of just come out of nowhere and play all day. Rather than like, for instance, in America, I 10-man with all these guys. And, it's really easy to know player habits when you're in a 1-versus-1 against somebody, what they do because you played them the night before in a 10-man or something, and you're in a 1-versus-1. And I think like when I was on EG, what helped me with my confidence 1.6 is I started playing like clan-based pickup games with like a lot of these Fnatic players and some of these other guys, and I think that gave me a lot of insight and confidence into just like their basic. It's not like they were doing any super insane smart plays. But they just to the way they like to play and the tempo of their T side play and the way they like to play CT side, how much they use grenades, you rely on that, etc. So hopefully, yeah, Cloud9 definitely is providing us the opportunity. We were actually just talking about maybe, and that would be awesome, to like move to Sweden in December or January for like 3 or 4 months at the least. At least a couple months, because the boot camp is nice and all, but to really just get comfortable there in that time zone and maybe play like something like the Star Series or whatever that is, the Star Ladder, and a couple of those events, and just play some of those events that not as big and not as Americans are never a part of. Maybe get in the groove with the rest of these teams, and then I feel like that would be a really good metric to see what we could do, because then we would have been involved in their kind of lifestyle for a little while. Because I do agree boot camps are helpful, but when you just live over there and you get used to just playing on a lower ping versus the same opponents, and you kind of have to you'll scrim on IP all of a sudden for like a heavy league for 2 weeks, and then a groups come out, and all of a sudden they're in your group, and then you stop scrimming each other, and then you have to kind of say, okay, well, we know what they were doing in all those scrims, but now they're going to change. So what are they going to change from what they saw in scrims? Because they saw us do this, we saw them do that, but now all of a sudden we're in the same group as them. What type of now it's a different battle. We've never really had those battles. We know that's never been a part of our story. When Titan and NIP play each other in a tournament, or Titan and Virtus Pro and Dignitas, all these teams scrim each other so much before ever knowing that they might play them in an event. Now maybe Virtus Pro and NIP don't play each other all the time because maybe the big dogs don't play each other as much because they see it's inevitable they'll play each other in tournaments. But that's always been an aspect of the tournaments and the competition that we're never really a part of. And that's what, like, for instance, that's a big part of us and iBuyPower playing each other, is we know each other not only as a team, but as players, and the way people like decisions like to be played, that sometimes you do things purely because you're playing that team and they've seen you do something else, and you just catch them off guard because they're caught up thinking about you doing the same thing you've done, and boom, you make that play. So the mind games only increase the more you know each other. So I'm curious. I think it might, it could play to our disadvantage. Maybe we'd get worse the more all these teams saw us, in Europe.
The thing is, though, if they really are going to, say there's going to be 3 majors next year, then actually it's even worth the gamble, right? Because if you can win 2 of those majors, that's fucking $200,000. The upside's worth it.
Yeah, so hopefully we could pull that off. It would be awesome, because I would argue that CS is probably in one of the strongest sponsorship positions it's been in since ever. Maybe like the start of Counter-Strike had some promising numbers, but that whole interim from 2007 or 2006 to 2012 and 13 was not very strong in terms of sponsorships outside of Europe. So hopefully we could make something happen.
Not to
get over there.
Mm-hmm. I know that you're a good person to have on this show, because actually you're going to do what Nothing says. You're just going to be a nice guy. You're not going to do this horrible, mean analysis, So let me ask you this question now, too. Knowing that what sort of answer I might get. Real talk. If C9 moved to Europe and they got all this wonderful practice, no excuses anymore, we're living here, we're playing on 9 ping every day, could they be the best team in the world? What do you think?
I don't necessarily see that happening, being consistently being the best team in the world. Okay. Would it help them be better? Maybe. But at the same time, Nothing just said, there's the fact that not only will they get more quality practice, at the same time, the European teams will have a better view on the way and the tendencies that they have, which is going to play in their disadvantage. Because, as he was just mentioning, there are certain aspects like how individual players play and their tendencies, but the same applies to teams as well. What do they tend to do on certain situations and stuff like that you can use as your own advantage in the tournament situation? So it's a two-way street. It works both ways. I mean, it's going to make them better, but at the same time, it's going to make other teams more prepared for them as well. So there's going to be less of the surprise factor playing into
analysis. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it really depends on the amount of effort we put into. If we just sit around and expect to be able to play all day, and all of a sudden we're as good as these guys, I don't think it would happen. It'd be more about the type of effort we put in while we were there.
The thing is, I can see both sides happening, actually. I think if you really did move for 3 months or 4 months, then you could become better as a team, in the sense that you might actually even figure out a different style you have to use if you play all these teams. But I also do think you probably would have to do that. I actually think, in a sense, you'd become better, but I also think you would lose something. I think part of the reason, the best example is Titan, okay? Titan has a way worse record against North American teams, the 2 best North American, than it does all these other teams in Europe. And that's not a coincidence. It's because those 2 teams, when they play Titan, scrim the fuck out of them. They just do wacky shit that Titan have no clue what the fuck is going on, and they're always, and it seems like it's a psychological thing, Titan's worried about, we can't know what they're going to do, and what do we do is, I get the sense Existence is a guy who, I bet he loves to play someone like Dignitas, where he knows exactly what they're going to do, I know what I'm going to do, and we just play it out, okay, we try and tweak little things, whereas if he plays against someone like C9 or iBuyPower, I get the sense that he's it's like the ultimate underdog match, they could fucking do anything, and if it's just 2, how are we going to win that? And I think that surprise factor would actually get taken away a bit, even though it's possible to improve in the other area and become better overall.
Yeah. Practicing would definitely get stale if we were just jumping through every smoke and not throwing any nades. So we would have to find a way to have more layers to our strategy, or just not scrim the top teams in Europe all
On
day.
the topic of jumping through smokes, one of the criticisms I always used to have for you, is I always used to say that I thought you played too passive in the end of 1.6. Like, I always used to want you to be like the go ham guy who just like went in and tried to kill all the people. And I thought that would play to your style. And I thought for CSGO especially, come on, you should do this. You're doing that now, it seems like. It actually seems like you're pretty impulsive and you go pretty ham. Are you going too far the other way? Have you got a good handle on it at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm learning a lot about how other teams react to me doing that. I just can't be too outside of my team limits, and if I'm just doing these plays and my team isn't ready to react, or it's not really like something that I've done a lot in practice, and all of a sudden I just do it in a match, that could be like detrimental sometimes. So like a couple times that happened at ESL 1 Cologne, where I made a couple plays even in the Titan D2 game and NIP on maybe once or twice on that D2 game as well. But where I just made a couple impulsive plays, and it just there wasn't really opportunity for my team to recover from it too easily. So I think I'm definitely looking forward to opening up rounds for my team, and I just got to make sure I'm doing it smart. And I think in the end of 1.6, the struggle I had was like really having confidence in my team. I think it was hard for me, like with the Ediz and Lurpus lineup and Fraud and Storm, I think it was my favorite because I really felt comfortable in my role of just like, they really set me up good with flashes and they really knew what I was going to try to do. And I think when that changed and we started bringing, Tommy was removed from the team, and after that point I just went back to like, it was tough for me to really know how to help when we had like D-Born or Kanji on the team. They just went back to doing too many cookie cutter type strats. So I think it's just really important for me to make sure, like, even if I'm not the highlight of our strat, I definitely have like a key role in strats, or can have one if I'm utilized right. Otherwise, that's where I become more of an average player if I'm just running in the rush. But I definitely feel comfortable going in second or third and trading on kills, with my aim and a game sense. It's just, I think I'm most useful, as you're saying, when I'm finding my comfort zone with those quick impulsive plays.
So Natu, let's talk about NIP, champions of ESL 1. What was your take on them at this tournament?
Shaky at the start, shaky throughout the tournament, barely made it through the finish line. Freiburg pulling a lot of weight, getting shit done at the end.
I mean, here's the thing, it's going to sound strange. A team just won a major tournament. But what's so fucking insane is, I think they were a better team at every one of the other majors that they lost. And here, they were in the worst form I've ever seen them in their whole careers, and they won the fucking major tournament. Is that unfair?
It's weird. It's not unfair, though. I mean, they just... I can imagine, like, the expectations that everyone has for them all the time, the way they've bombed both majors before. There was like it felt like there was a higher force that really just wanted for them to win, because they just freaking always managed to come across and through all these huge obstacles that they were facing, like Cloud9 game, and the finals, for example, as well. I mean, they like for the finals, for example, that last map really felt like Fnatic was going to be taking it. Like for me, it felt like Fnatic had that Inferno. But then all of a sudden, NIP just came through and made it happen.
So nothing. It'd be one thing if they'd played your team and they'd been in trouble, but somehow they just edged it, and then they say they just dominate the rest of the tournament and they win. Okay, that's easy to understand. Or meanwhile, let's say they did the same thing. They did the same exact result in your game, but then because they weren't playing well, they just lose to LDLC and it's over. Okay, whatever. Instead, it seemed like what happened in your game was like the story of every round of the playoffs for them, and somehow they won the tournament. What do you think of a NIP at this tournament?
Wait, so say that question again, the last part. I just kind of got lost because they're playing. I mean, they didn't start out well.
It was a miracle that they beat your team in the way they did. But the whole point of a miracle is it's only supposed to happen once, and then there's some sort of storyline after that. Like, okay, maybe they overcome that, and then they become good, and that's why they won. Or maybe they overcome that miracle, but then because they're not good, they lose. Instead, neither happened, and instead they did the miracle 3 times in a row and somehow won the whole tournament.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what, that's why we keep referencing their superstar abilities. I mean, Get Right Forces just know how to not give up, and if the other team gives them that opportunity, most of the time they'll take advantage of it. We gave them a couple of those opportunities. They took advantage of it, and they beat us. I was surprised in the way they beat us, but I wasn't surprised that they kept trucking through the tournament. It's just one of those things where unless teams convincingly close them out, they're not going to go out too easily. And Cobble was obviously a toss-up. So once we blew Dust 2, it was kind of just like any man's game, I guess. So I don't really, in terms of them doing it 3 times in a row, yeah, I don't really know how that happened. It seems like everyone kept giving it to them, but at the same time, they took it. Fnatic TK'd on Inferno, but at the same time, NiP stayed strong on their CT side, and they didn't give them too many dumb picks. They, Fifthler had some nice rounds, not going their purpose, and Get Right and was shutting stuff down, and Freeberg had some amazing rounds on Inferno on T side, so they just stuck to it.
Like, I actually thought this when that final ended. Like, I was thinking that what's funny is I had the same thought as Natu did in the final in every one of those series. Every time it got to the 3rd map, I was like, wow, NiP's probably going to lose this series. Like, they're playing badly, and then it would be at the end of the map, the enemy would start breaking down, and they would start doing the magical shit, like winning fucking eco rounds that you shouldn't win, and that's where the whole time, I was like, what's funny is when NiP won, I was like, wow, they finally won a major. How did they do that? Because they were playing the worst I think I've ever seen them play, and yet they won. Like, it's not like they were playing great CS and that's why they won, Like, there's some insane stat, where I think, unless someone was wrong, I didn't look it up, but someone said that in the entire tournament, NiP won 144 rounds and they lost 147. I would take a guess, just from my knowledge of CS, that has never happened in the history of a major tournament. That the team who won the fucking tournament lost more rounds than they won, and was like won by so little as they did. I think this might be like the worst performance by a really great team winning a major I've ever seen. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's the second time that's happened to us for SEM, where we lost more rounds than we won.
It's one of those things where you can say that there's no.
Or we won more rounds than we lost.
There's no explanation for everything.
Sure.
As an analyst, you don't buy that, obviously, because you want to analyze everything. But it just not everything has an explanation. I think this is one of those things.
But I think what's interesting about it is the simple storyline people are going to want to make, and this is why the Fiflorin thing was a big deal, is like, well, since they won, there is no problem in NiP. They're absolutely fine. They're the world champions. Don't worry about it. They're the best team in the world. Yeah, sort of. Like, they're sort of the best team by default, if you think about it, because what other team actually is nailing every event? Like, if VP had won this event, you could say VP was the best team in the world. But instead, VP went out in the round of 8 and actually didn't look that good. So suddenly, the hype of VP from G3 is gone now. Now we're not thinking of them as the best team in the world. So, yeah, NiP is sort of the best team in the world, but they've won the tournament and they have the ranking. But they're not, like, a dominant team right now. They're actually in pretty bad form, even though they won the tournament. Like, I'm worried for them.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, you're as good as your last race. That's what they say in motorsports, and I guess that kind of applies for Counter-Strike as well.
Yeah, everyone's pretty intimidating right now.
I mean,
even until Titan went out, they're still good as shit. Dignitas. Yeah. Keep going, not to.
Yeah, what I was trying to say, I think Counter-Strike as a game right now is the most competitive it's ever been throughout the whole freaking 15 years that I've played it. I mean, so many teams putting in so much effort into it, and like so much practice hours, and there's like, that's the cool thing though, like so many teams that can battle it out with each other. So like, even though people may argue ESL 1 with the map pool and the veto system may have some influence obviously on the scores and what happened there, but still it was cool that it was super hard to predict on any of the matches. Like, a friend of mine asked me for some betting advice on matches. I was like, dude, just you're better off not doing any betting. Just go and just enjoy the matches, and the
other night we got so much shit for that bet.
Okay, I've got another statement for you, Natu, that both of you can answer this. You might not like it though. Not only did NiP, like, to me, again, I'm going to use the word should, and it's a very rare exception. I will. They shouldn't have won this tournament. Basically, like, if I'm thinking, I think the teams that probably should have won was actually Fnatic. Probably should have won if I think about it. Fnatic is probably the team I would have said were the best team at the tournament, like the way they played overall. But I actually think the only reason NiP won this tournament, you ready for the statement, is because of Cobblestone. If Cobblestone wasn't in this map pool, I think NiP would never have won this tournament.
It's a possibility.
They won that map every single time.
Well, except in groups.
Yeah, but who gives a fuck about that? In the playoffs, if it wasn't for Cobblestone, what would they be winning on? Think of all the other maps that could have been there. What, they're going to win on Inferno, they're going to win on Dust 2, they're going to win on... Yeah, not necessarily. It's hard to know that they would. And it's not even like they're winning big on Cobblestone.
Yeah, it was weird when we played them too. We beat them on Nuke somehow. That was supposed to be one of their best maps.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. Like, the veto system, the map pool, really played into the tournament and the way that it played out.
Yeah, and they won. They won. They figured it away.
Real talk. The veto system sucked.
I agree. It's shit.
What do you think? Nothing.
Oh yeah, we were. I mean, you could see all the interviews we did at the event. We've talked about this a lot. We didn't like it. We too many maps that we didn't like. The randomized third map. Like, yeah.
I mean, the best example of the third map fucking someone was Na'Vi, where their third map they got Nuke, which is the one they don't play, and they still only lost 14-16.
Yeah.
So if you're Na'Vi, you don't go home and go, "Oh, we lost because Fnatic's better than us," and you know what? You just think to yourself, "Well, if I could have not had Nuke, then I would have won, or maybe I would have won." You know. So unfortunately, you play the veto system, not the map.
Yeah, and I mean, if we take out the veto system, there are 7 maps. Even if we had Overpass and Cobblestone on the map pool, but please, for the love of God, announce the map pool. Not 1 month, but at least 2 months before a tournament. So, you know, and then please, could we have a unified map pool for every freaking tournament and league, please? Please?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That'd be cool.
They didn't even have those maps in their own qualifier.
I know.
Like, I'll give you an example.
That's why we didn't play them.
One of the worst things I think about the veto system is because it was randomized. It meant that you could have this is an utterly insane scenario. Imagine a situation where Natu's team is playing Nothing's team, and both teams hate Overpass, but it's in the map pool still. It's possible the random system can draw Overpass as the third map, even though your two teams would at least agree, right, well, we both agree we don't want to play Overpass, so no matter what we do play, we can at least both agree not to play the map we hate. That can actually be drawn then. To me, that's insane. You can't have that in big tournaments, man. Because you don't want teams playing, both of them playing one of their worst maps. In theory, you want teams playing, in an ideal world, you'd like teams to both be playing maps they're both good on, because then you get great Counter-Strike, right?
Yeah. I mean, we had great Counter-Strike, especially on, well, someone would argue maybe even on Cobblestone, but we had some great, super good matches on the Mirage, Inferno, Dust 2.
That's because CS is a good game though, and you've got amazing players though.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, it's the other way around now too. That's how amazing CS players are. They can make Cobblestone be really good if they're having a great game. Now listen, not every Cobblestone game was awesome.
No.
That's just how good fucking CS players are, you know.
Yeah, I mean the map is just way too big. It's just it's horrible.
If it was up to you,
it wasn't like I tweeted like it wasn't a good option in 2005 at the CPL. It's not going to be magically a good option in 2014 with like 2 more hallways to go through. You know, it's not like a major overhaul through the map. We even have Forge. We had Forge, DE Forge. That was crap. It was better, but it was still crap.
It was still crap, yeah.
Yeah.
So what about Overpass? What marks does Overpass get? Was that okay?
It's got potential, I would say.
What do you think? Nothing. Oh, wait a second.
It takes a while. I mean, needs more time. Also, a pretty big map, except for the fact that the bomb sites are pretty much like below. So, but with some time, it could be an okay map. Yeah.
What do you think? Nothing on the 2 maps. What were your takes on them?
Yeah, Overpass seemed to have some dead areas in it, like the big long area. The 2 bomb sites are so close to each other. Maybe like they could slide the CT spawn bomb site a little more near long or something, long A. So, and then I don't know. And Cobble, the hole seems kind of obnoxious. I would kind of like to see it more like Forge, where there's that back entrance to B. So it makes teams spread out their CT side defense a little bit more, so they don't just have to be able to say 2 back B and then like 2 near the connector and 1 A. Because I think the more teams played Cobble, I think the more they would realize how easy it is to just like once you have that back B site to be able to just easily over rotate to A, and you can just hide in that back area. So yeah, I think they need to change the entrances into the bomb sites on Cobble.
Like, I also think as well, the event actually got saved by the fact that NiP won it. Because, let's go through another possible scenario, okay? So, say this Fnatic team had come and won the event. or let's say LDLC, who was doing well up to the semi-finals, let's say they'd won the event. So these two teams are winning their first big event with these lineups. Then someone could have always said, oh, remember that event that LDLC just won because it had those weird customs and they got like, you know, maybe they got an overpass as the third one against someone that they would have lost to. And so actually you would have even fucked the person who'd won maybe legitimately. Whereas instead, it's only because we all know NiP's the greatest team ever and they've already won shit in the past. It kind of covers that up, you know. No one's really going to say that. Even though I've just said it myself, I think Cobblestone's the only reason they won the tournament, you know. In fact, my joke is NiP won ESL 1 Cobblestone.
Yeah, but I mean, I would look at the big picture though for this tournament. It was great for Counter-Strike as a game. We had we broke every single type of record in viewership and people in game and stuff like that. We had so many entertaining games still. I had a blast watching it. Like, it was probably the most fun I've had watching. Yeah, it was probably the most fun Counter-Strike I've watched ever, pretty much, for Counter-Strike Go. So, in that point of view, it was a success. But at the same time, these things we were talking about
could have been better.
Could have been better. Okay. Yeah.
So going forward, the problem with big majors like this is why I'm actually glad CS has, like, in theory, maybe 3 majors a year, as opposed to like the international style, is that when you have the big event, everyone always gets like sort of the blues afterwards. It feels like the next tournament, like, it takes a while to get into the next tournament, you know, because it's not a major, the next one. It'll just be like a smaller, it'll have less teams, and maybe if a team loses, like if NiP loses at the next tournament, no one will really be like, right, you total shit. Now they'll be like, you know, maybe they need to pick it up again, whatever. Where do we go from here? Like, what do you think of the next few months?
Do you want to pick on this?
You could start. I mean, okay, I guess I'll start. I think there's going to be there might be some changes with teams, but I think in terms of like internally with the teams, because I kind of zoned out on part of your question, so hopefully I'm still answering this correctly. I think with some of the teams, they're going to realize obviously that NiP won, but it wasn't like they dominated, as we've been talking about, and there's still Dignitas, Titan, even Epsilon. All these teams are so terrifying that I think people are just going to be, we might see a couple changes, but I think everyone's just going to be really bearing down on looking at their flaws, because everyone is so close that you have no choice but to look at how can we improve. And, you know, so in the past, sometimes, like you said, you could just lose and say, oh, they got lucky for this reason, let's just keep doing our thing. But I think for a lot of teams, it's opened their eyes at this event that, you know, partly because of the size of the event, it's motivating people, and partly also because so many teams that haven't had success before are finding success, like LDLC and my team. Even teams that went out in group are just, they really want to not let that happen again. Titan, I think I don't know how much longer this can go on, but those guys are definitely a great team. So I just think the excitement around this event is going to kind of be a spark plug for a lot of teams to be more motivated.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but again, looking at the bigger picture, I'm just hoping that we can really build on the hype that we've built right now with Counter-Strike as a game. I mean, we need to utilize this momentum again, that we have with the game. So looking at that aspect, I think it's looking a bit dull schedule-wise for tournaments right now.
Yeah, I would like, it'd be cool, right, if Valve could like give like a...
We need an advance when the next one is.
This month. That would create a lot of hype. Like if, hey, we have one in February, one in July, one in this one, that everyone could kind of plan around it, do little campaigns.
That would even help the lineups. Like, say you did want to kick someone, then you would think to yourself, okay, if I'm going to kick someone, I should probably do it now. If I know there's 3 months to the next tournament, you know, now is the time to do it, so I can pick up the next one. Whereas let's say there isn't one for 6 months, then you might not have done that. You know, it would help with everything. I think if everyone knew months in advance when it is. Okay, I think we've got a lot of topics covered here. Oh, I have a last question actually about Titan. I want to ask Natu this. Maybe Nothing played them as well. When I look at Titan, if I just look in the server only at their results, they don't make sense. Like, the way they played at G3 is the way that lineup should, in theory, be performing at events. Okay, like a really tactical team, really good. Kenny S doing well, Scream doing well, MBK doing well. Everything looks good. The way they performed the ESL 1 was like, it doesn't make sense. It only makes sense when I start trying to think of other factors, like maybe living in that gaming house sucks for them, or maybe that this lineup can't handle the pressure of a big major. I don't know, something like that. So I want to ask you this: when you play them in practice, if you practice them, are they like they were at G3, just like a dominating force, like a really great team? Is there any cracks that you've seen?
We played against them in the ESL One qualifier. Like we were in the upper bracket game against them to play which one goes through to Cologne, and we lost to them on 2 maps pretty heavily. And they were like, they've been very game back in the days when they were very games when they were playing Counter-Strike Source. This is my teammates told me that I haven't really played Source that much, so I wouldn't know firsthand. But what I've been told is that they've always been really heavy on the anti-stratting, and like I'm not saying that they're like really building strategies around anti-stratting their opponent, but like small things, they really have a good read on tendencies that how, let's say on Inferno, how the opposing team likes to hold B. When do they smoke it off, the choke points, when they flash, and blah, 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 and where they tend to be at. So they really like to play against those little small things and use those things to their advantage. And maybe, this is just theory crafting here, but maybe those are the type of things that failed for them again, and then sort of a snowball effect started happening from there, you know. Is it going to happen again? Blah, blah, blah. It happened in Katowice. Is it happening again here? And then they ran into the Dignitas brick wall on Nuke.
Do you have a theory on Titan or what could be wrong? Nothing? Did you get to scrim them at all before the event?
No. I think we tried to scrim or something, and they had the same problem as NIP. They could tell that we were on kind of crappy setups and didn't want to play us. I think that was them. Something seems stale when they're not getting the Kenny S fire. And I don't know, Kenny never seems to really dominate our team as hard, so maybe that's something. Yeah, actually, but he was playing well with a rifle versus us, not a sniper. On their T side, I think he had like 20 kills, with mostly using AK. I don't play them probably as much as Natsu does, but they have great tactics. Maybe they're getting too far from their strengths, and they're focused too much on antis. And I feel like they have 100 strats. You look at Existence book. There's a book at every LAN. I feel like they have like 1,000 options on every map, and maybe they're too spread thin with what they could do, and maybe they need to get back to what we were talking about earlier and just focus on the strengths. Yeah, back to the basics. I mean, obviously, I think bringing Shoxy back into their team for. Yeah, I don't know.
If possible, yeah.
Yeah, for someone. I don't know who it would be, like maybe Smiths or Existence or something. I don't know.
That's the problem as well. From the outside, it's like one of those stupid movies that I don't watch because they're like chick flicks or whatever, where like, oh, these two people are supposed to be together and everyone knows it, but you know, something's keeping them apart. And eventually at the end of the movie, you know, they get, well, I think this is what happened. I don't watch them. They get together finally, and I guess that's when women cry and they feel emotions and all that retarded shit. So we all know that Shoxy should be in Titan. Epsilon's alright, but they're not world beaters, and even if he plays godlike, they're probably not going to win the fucking major tournament.
Yeah, so I don't know.
If you can just put these two together, if it's possible, I don't know if it is. It feels like that's what they should go back to if they can.
Honestly, I don't know which ones of them are best buds and which ones aren't. It seems like they get along decently when I see them at like the player parties. They kind of all hang around and chatter. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Shoxy left because he didn't want to live in the team house, right, or something like that. He just didn't.
Yep. He didn't like it.
I think so, yeah.
Just got too much for him, so yeah, I don't know.
I can understand that, though.
And by the way, Nothing, that's something you need to watch out for. When you're saying like how great it would be to go live in Europe.
No, I know. Like
after 2 months, you might be like, I'm not sure I want to live in the same room as Semphis for like 2.5 months. You know, that guy's getting annoying now.
Well,
the guy's a troll.
I would have a goal in mind. I'm sure I would. Okay. It wouldn't be my dream to just live with all 4 of my teammates forever, but.
You know what I would love is if you all just got in a fist fight when you were living in Sweden, beat the shit out of each other.
And then we just stick as a team and just rise to the top.
Oh no, maybe it works out actually. Maybe what happens is, you remember the movie Full Metal Jacket?
Yeah.
Maybe you all have to do to like Semphis what they all did to that guy, where they just like held him down with a blanket in the night and just beat him with like bars of soap, just so he like never fucked up again, you know. Maybe that's what your team needs to bond. Nothing. I'm just recommending you all beat Semphis with soap in the sock.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there can always be a backfire effect living together. I think that's why we would try to focus it when we had to go to events, so we weren't just stuck inside rooms for 2 months straight, so that we could maybe go to an event, come back to the team house for a couple of weeks, go to an event, come back. You know, obviously we try to make time. If we felt claustrophobic or something, we'd go out. If we felt like we were getting each other's throats, hopefully it'd balance it. I mean, that's why we wouldn't have one for 6 months or a year, because it might get a little too much. But
it would.
2 or 3. I think 2 or 3 months would be solid because it would be much more goal oriented, and people might be a little annoyed with their roommates. But at least at that stage, you realize, okay, I only have a month left or 2 months left, and we just got to focus on practice. But I think we would actually, I think we would just kind of make it a fun thing. So I don't think our team would have too much annoyances. Maybe inside, maybe someone, cooks
Just
food
make
and
sure-
doesn't clean their dishes.
You gotta make sure that the place you get is big enough for everyone.
Yeah, right.
Get
So
their
we're
own
not all
space.
crammed. That's key.
Yeah.
Yeah, space. I think if we had
'Cause-
space, that would be good.
Yeah, because I've lived with a couple of my teammates back in the days for like a couple of months, and it like in a small apartment, it really got tense at times. And like now looking back at it, I think fondly of it. It was a lot of fun, but it got really tough sometimes because people have their not everyone lives the same way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've pretty much done it. We've covered everything from fucking the start of history till
When is this going to be uploaded, Soren? People are asking me already. So I tweeted about it.
probably tomorrow, depending on how long it takes to render. Anyway, that's the end of the show. Do you have any final words? Do each of you have to like whore out some companies who like pay for you to stay alive and eat fucking ramen and stuff? Like, what's going on here? Nothing. You have someone you want to talk about now?
But we can say thanks to Cloud9, but
Yeah,
thanks
sure.
to you for putting in the effort to be a big part of a community that you obviously do it. Well, I don't know how much money you get paid, but you do it for some
I got
kind
all
of
the money,
personal
yeah.
love.
All the
Yeah,
money.
you do it for some kind of personal love. It's even if we got into that banter earlier. Normally, I appreciate reading your things, and I do appreciate the fact that people spend time to read between the lines. I was only bitter, and I know people are going to talk about it in the comments. Me and Duncan don't hate each other. I'm sure we can
That's
grab a
fine.
beer after this. It's just one of those things where it's like a basic opinion. I don't like
Yeah,
sometimes
we
I
just
present
disagree
things.
on things.
Yeah. So it's all good though. Thanks for the interview.
Natu, you have anyone you want to thank?
I don't need
The
to.
Finnish
really.
army, people who are 19 keeping you alive, and Russians not invading your country. Like, who do you want to thank?
I would like to. I would like to
Didn't
thank.
they defend against Russia back in the day?
I would like to thank the Finnish military for ruining a lot of Counter-Strike careers back in the day.
But
Yeah.
keeping you safe from Russia,
Well, that's for
sort
sure.
of.
Sort of, yeah. But anyway, no, not really. Just it's been fun. It's 2 a.m., so I don't really have anything in my head right now except for the fact that I really need some freaking sleep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And obviously, I don't have anyone to thank because I've done everything that I've done in my life. So it's thanks to me for being me. See you next week, everyone.